somebody who isn't present, because a lot of times
What's up?
out of the building, traveling and hard, and it would kind of.
I'm going to mute the stream for just a moment. We are going to be non-judgmental today and realize that I just don't feel like drying my hair. But the good news is that I have showered. You're welcome. So we're watching the live stream for the trial for Alec Murdaugh. I have quite a lopsided head. But I also have some things I need to do, so I'll be going kind of in and out. You might see me up and down, crafting, cleaning, painting, whatever. But again, let's not judge if you see my butt crack for half a second, or the fact that I can't get my hair right. Okay, that's not what we're here for. We're not here for me. We're here for me watching this. And again, on stand is the accountant for what was PMPED. I believe now it's Parker Law Group. She was the lead accountant while Alec Murdaugh was employed at that attorney's office. And she is the one, along with Alec's paralegal at the time, I believe her name was Annette, that confronted Alec on missing funds, clients saying they weren't paid, expenses coming in, and the insurance company saying, oh yes, he was paid. This also happens to be the sister-in-law to Russell Lafitte, someone else who has been recently convicted of 6 federal criminal financial charges, some of which are knowing that Alec was committing financial crimes and being complicit in it and not saying anything. Thank you.
Skills that you see, how he was able to value the case.
I'm going to mute myself and start sharing the butt out of this. She said he's not that good of a lawyer, but he talked his way into settlements. Basically, that's what I think she's saying. You can leave it up to your own discretion. I'm going to try muting on my microphone and see what that does. I love that we're able to hear all this. We're getting like the really inside scoop to how he operated, which I find fascinating. I just like learning how corrupt, evil people think. So I can learn patterns of behavior and avoid it in the future. Not really sure what they're doing right this second, but I'll look in a moment.
You mentioned before that firm to operate at the beginning of the year after it cleared its books, that it would loan or take loans from partners at their option in order to sort of get some seed.
Gonna mute. Of the traveling pants. I love that all of this can be entered into the trial. It is a perfect depiction of motive, especially the timing between when he was confronted about funds and Paul and Maggie's deaths, and then when he was forced to resign and the roadside shooting that he said occurred. I'm glad the jury gets the full picture and they can decide from there. I think without this, it would have been a disservice to justice. Still think the jury should make up their own minds, but you know, they should find him guilty.
And I put this exhibit up on the screen. Let me get ahead of myself. This is exhibit 428. Is that offer of evidence?
Deputy Judge.
All right.
Admit it without
Back real
objection.
quick, 428, this is this is the loan check you were talking about, is that right?
That's right.
This is where Alec erroneously received a check meant for his brother Randy,
That's right.
and then ultimately managed to get the same amount twice, is that correct?
That's right.
All right. And how much was that check for? I can bring it to you if you need to see it.
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
I'll bring it to you. Screen over here is bigger than that.
It was for $121,358.63.
$121,000, correct?
That's correct.
When he received the check, did Alex say, no, this isn't my $121,000 check?
No, he didn't.
Now, you mentioned, you started to talk about some things you noticed in late of 2020, and let's just set the table a little bit more.
Pretty sure I was muted the whole time. This is a great stream.
Tell
Thanks
the
for
jury,
joining.
Before we see some paperwork, tell the jury.
I'm going to be a disaster for the
how
rest of the time. You're
disbursements go
welcome.
about. Is there certain paperwork that's done, and how do the lawyers
I'm
interface
really
with the finance
consistent.
stuff for that to be accomplished?
Okay, so a disbursement after a case is won, or what we call settled, the money comes into the client trust, just like I talked about. A disbursement will recap how much money was won, how much attorney fees, how much expenses were withheld or earned for our firm in that. And then it will list any loans or liens that need to be paid off. And what I mean by that is like medical liens, medical bills, insurance companies getting their money back for items that they paid, and then it will show the balance that goes to the client.
And so then how do they interface with the finance staff? What does the finance staff do as opposed to when the attorneys prepare those disbursement forms?
It comes over to our finance department. We have the supporting documentation with it, and we will process the checks based off the attorney's signature. Those then go back to the attorneys that handled the case or the paralegals that handled the case. They meet with the client and explain the disbursement to them and give them the funds.
Is the finance staff relying on what the lawyers are sending them to determine what checks should be cut?
Yes. With support.
With support.
Yes.
Ultimately, are they trusting the attorneys to provide them the correct information?
We are.
All right, so you mentioned that something that happened in late 2020 that was the first things that you started to notice in the wake of the Bowden case that was a little different. And tell the jury what you were about to talk about.
As I said, in late 2020, I really didn't notice it at that point. But some of these items that we're going to discuss started happening at that point. My discovery of things started coming to a head in May of 21.
May of 2021.
Yes.
All right, and tell me what was the first thing that came to your attention?
Because one thing that came to attention was a disbursement that the fees were made out and processed to Forge Consulting. And what that meant is that the fees weren't going into our personal account like they should. They weren't going to the firm. Forge Consulting is a true company that you can do structures of attorney fees. But the way that this was done was not correct.
Good morning, everyone. Hey, Stacy. Hey, Stina. Thank you for
Let me slow
listening.
down So we can unpack this a little
Okay.
bit. All right. Let's first talk about what is a structure. What is
So
a
again, this
structure?
is
What is that
the
mean?
former
So a
accountant for
structure means that
PMPED
you
who
can
discovered
set up a fee
Alex
in the agreement with the
mismanagement of
insurance
funds
company
to
that you
be-
can put that money into an annuity that you'll get it out later. You can avoid taxes
Non-specific, I
now
guess.
and take them out
She's
when
also
they're
the sister-in-law
65
of Russell
or
Levine.
whatever
I've said
you
that a little
determine.
bit. Hey,
So it's a
Christoph
way
Van
that they
always.
can
How are
defer
you?
income for retirement if they're having a good
Good
year.
morning.
they
Good
can do
morning.
that.
Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it.
So maybe an explanation would be kind of like the lottery. You can either get your settlement in one lump sum or you can get it paid over time, correct?
Correct.
And so this is what a
She's the one
structure
that
is getting it paid
discovered
over
his
time.
Correct.
And are there tax benefits associated with doing the structure?
Issues,
They would avoid
and
taxes
not long
at
after she
the
confronted
year
him,
that
Paul and
they
Maggie
made the
died,
fee,
and
they
then
would
not
pay
long
the
after
taxes when
he
they
was
got it
forced to
out,
resign,
similar
which
to
she
your
was present
retirement
for because he found out
401k.
a lot
And
more
is it sometimes
financial
common
issues.
for plaintiffs' lawyers,
He
lawyers who get
was
recoveries
mysteriously
for
shot on the
clients,
side of the road.
to have
Oh,
their
awesome. Thank
clients
you.
get the settlement in a structure as opposed to getting it in all one lump sum, so that there's some security over time with that money.
It is definitely a vehicle that can be used by plaintiffs' lawyers. We don't do it very often in our firm. And when it is done, it has to be, every partner needs to know about it and needs to be agreed upon. Because obviously that money's not coming into the firm to help with overhead and expenses. So we have to agree on it and we have to account for it in our allocations at the end of the year to determine bonuses that we're going to pay out.
Sure, but I'm talking about with clients right now. So clients that receive a settlement, they can
Okay.
elect to either get it in one lump sum, or they can get a structured annuity over time where they get it however much a year for the however many years it goes. Correct?
Yes, that's true too.
Kind of like the lottery, you can get the whole big thing, but with taxes, or you can get a bigger sum over time. Correct?
That's correct.
And so some clients might choose to get it over time so that their money is more secure over a longer time, correct?
Correct. And you generally see that when it's a minor involved or somebody with special needs that has a disability of some sort.
And so what is Forge Consulting, the legitimate business Forge Consulting? What
The
do they-
state is finally
They set
allowed
up
to
structured
save for
fees
children with
clients like we're talking
disabilities
about.
without
They do special needs
being
trusts for
penalized.
people who are injured or going to need life care plans. And they handle that kind of, they have a few other things that. they
Because
do, but I'm not
previously, had
very
we
good
saved
at
for my
those
son's
services.
future, he would not
They
be able to
provided
get
services over the years. The legitimate
state
company, Forge
Medicaid.
Consulting, legitimate services to the law firm and its clients over the years, and helping them set up structured settlements.
We do. We've used them 250 to 300 times.
And who's kind of like the main guy at Forge Consulting, the legitimate business?
Michael Gunn.
All right.
So what she's explaining
you
now
mentioned
is that
we're not talking now about
someone
the
had a good
client
analogy.
structuring their
Basically,
settlements,
there's a
but what if
company called
lawyer
Forge
wins a big
Consulting
case and wants to, so he's
that
going to
they
get a
would
huge
use
fee.
for their
let
clients
me
when
ask you
they
this
receive their
first.
settlements.
Generally, what is the
Alec had
legal
a
fees for the firm when they win a case,
account,
whether by
a
settlement
bank
or by
account at
trial?
Bank of America called
Generally,
Forge,
they're 33%
called the account
to
Forge,
40%. And it depends on
and
what stage
was
the case was in or the work we had to do. So if we settle
basically
a case
to
before
distract
we have
people
to
from
start
realizing
doing
it wasn't really
sums and
going to
claims
Forge
and
Consulting, it was
depositions or
going to him.
trial, we take 33 and a
So
third
it would be
percent.
like
If it
having your
goes
own bank
further,
account
we
and
do
calling it Home
40%,
Depot
and
without it
can go to
actually being an
45%
account
if
linked
it's
to
on
Home
the bill.
Depot.
But generally speaking, it's between a third and 40%.
So let's say that somebody's a partner, and let's say they win a case of $10 million, and it was a 40% one, so they're going to get a $4 million fee, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's say that
And
they
yesterday, the
decided that
judge,
instead of taking that fee,
said
that
all
$4
of this
million
could be
fee, they want to
submitted
structure
for the
that fee
trial.
just like a
So,
client would. Can they do that?
but he
They
also let
do
the
that, and that's what I was
jury
referring to
know that
before with
this is
the,
not an admittance of guilt for
authorization
murder.
of the
This
other
is
partners
just
and making sure that we have enough
to
money
show
to
possible
operate
motive.
and enough money to account for it.
which I
If
thought
they
was
do
very fair
that,
of him to
it's
say.
supposed to be done in the release, and the insurance company will send the money directly to Forge Consulting and not through us.
Okay. Because he can't go through y'all directly or it doesn't work. Is that
Or he
correct?
would not get the tax benefit of it.
And if an attorney still had to do that, they're going to have to work everything out with y'all to make sure everything's accounted for the end of the year bonuses and everything else.
That's correct.
Is that a common thing that people in the firm were doing?
No,
All right. So, kind of setting all that up, did you, what came to your attention as it related to the defendant, Alec Murdaugh?
I'm pricing
So in
some
May
things for a
17,
sale
there
I'm
was a
doing tomorrow,
disbursement
hopefully.
called Hirschberger that the
Let me mute
fees
because it's going to
were
crinkle.
said I'd have to look at the exact disbursement, but it said structured fees Forge, and it had an amount.
Let me get something more real quick.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 429 to your testimony, and have you just flip through that real quick and tell me generally what that is.
Okay, this is the disbursements to do with the money recovered in the Hirschberger case. And this one had multiple disbursements.
All right, but let's just talk about the one you were just referring to. And
Okay.
I'll show it to you
It's this page.
on the third page of this exhibit. Is that right?
That's right.
All right, pick up your story. What did
Someone
you
just
notice,
honked.
that came to your attention.
So it says PMPED attorney fee, and in parentheses, add Forge. The check had been made out payable to Forge, and I knew this was incorrect. So I went and had a discussion with Alec about this. And the basics of the discussion was we needed to know about if they were going to do a structured annuity, we needed to do it. Also told him that the way he had done it was incorrect, that he would not be saving any tax consequences, that he needed to properly set it up with the insurance company on the front side.
All right, and why wasn't it done right? Why were you telling, at least from what you knew at the time, why did you think it was not being done right?
Basically, because it should have gone from the insurance company directly to Forge. We would not write a check and send it to Forge for a structured fee.
Let me put this up on the screen just real quick.
Yeah, no other objection to 429.
All right, and this time I move states 429 into evidence, I believe, without additional objection. All right. So is this the disbursement sheet you were talking about?
Yes, sir.
And this is generally the first one the jury's seen, but is this generally how disbursement sheets look that are prepared by the law firm?
Yes, you generally see the caption and then our inside number, which is the matter ID. You'll see the recovery and who's paid out. Then the next section should be your fee and expenses.
All right, so you got the fee right there, correct?
That's correct.
And then you have expenses, and what are expenses?
So the expenses are the case costs that we paid going along, costs to get depositions of paid transcribers, medical records, expert opinions. Sometimes vehicles are involved that we store. So it's anything that we pay on behalf of.
I used to be a transcriptionist way back in the day. It was a medical transcriptionist, but still.
That's separate from the attorney's fees, right?
Correct.
All right, so when y'all settle a case, you're going to get your attorney's fees, but you're also going to get paid back any costs and expenses you had to litigate the case.
That's correct.
Two separate amounts.
Correct.
All right, and then we've got a lien. Explain to me what a lien is and how those affect disbursements.
So a lien is, it could be as simple as paying a doctor's bill that was guaranteed, or it can be paying back subrogation, which means subrogation just means if you had insurance that covered it personally, your Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we recovered money, Blue Cross Blue Shield or Medicare and Medicaid, if you had that, would then be seeking their money back. So that would be a lien.
Sometimes somebody who got injured, like in a car wreck or something, might have medical bills, and there's a lien for that.
Yes,
And sometimes funds might be withheld to satisfy those medical bills.
that's correct too.
Is it common for the law firm to then negotiate with the medical provider, like a hospital or whatever, and see if you can get that medical bill down to a number they'll settle for?
That is correct.
And then if you save any money between what their bill was and what you get them to accept, is that additional money that should go back to the client?
That's right.
And are those very common in these types of cases?
Yes, and generally, we will not hold up dispersing the money to the client, waiting on that to happen, because it can take a while. So we may have a disbursement that leaves some money in our account, the balance of those bills while we're negotiating them, and then we'll do a second disbursement to pay those clients that money or the provider the money.
So you pay them the big amount first, and then if you're lucky enough to settle for a lesser amount, then whatever's left over, you'll send to them later.
Correct.
This is very
So then
Eric
down here we have then
or not.
ultimate,
Girardi keys plus some murder.
beneficiaries, the clients, is that correct?
That's right. And if
then you're
there's
supposed to-
multiple as this one, you would see the split between the two.
All right. And just real quick, whose signature is that right there?
That is Alex,
And have you worked with them for how long, or did work with them for?
23 years, 22 years.
All right. And so you got very familiar with his signature?
Yes,
You recognize that as his signature?
yes.
All right, going back here to this disbursement, we had BMP attorney's fee Forge, and then you had that amount And then what is this next page of this exhibit?
That's the canceled check payable to Forge for $83,333.33.
All right, and you recognize that signature on there?
That's Alex.
And so when we last left off, you were telling Alec that it had been done wrong because it had gone straight from the trust account direct to what you believe to be Forge at the time, correct?
Correct.
And it can't go to the law firm or the tax benefits go away.
That's right.
All right. So you raised those issues with Alec. What was his response when you first talked to him about this?
His response was that he was not worried so much about the tax ramifications and saving the taxes, but that he was trying to get money in Maggie's name due to the boat accident that had happened in February of 2019.
Did
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He also brought up the fact that he was friends with Michael Gunn and that was going to try to work with Michael Gunn, putting up some fees during the year as a favor to Michael Gunn and to help him accomplish putting money in Maggie's name.
Did he say anything? And I apologize if you already said this. Did he say anything in response to your pointing out that this isn't going to work for the tax benefit?
He said that's fine. He was not worried about the tax benefits so much as getting the money in Maggie's name.
Because
The boat wreck.
All right. Did that concern you at all?
Yes, it did.
And why did it concern you?
Because that is hiding assets and we're not going to be part of any hiding assets or any wrongdoing. So we were.
So
very
yeah, he's
concerned
trying to
that he was
move money
trying to
around so
do
that
And we didn't want to be. a part of
he was
it.
already being sued
At that
for
point in time, did you
the
do
boat
anything about
crash.
it, or
So
did you kind of
like
table
she's
the
saying, he's
matter
trying
for
to
the time
hide
being?
We kind
assets
of
so the
tabled the matter
victims
for the time being.
won't get their money basically.
I had it kind of set aside, trying to figure out how am I going to
So
account
kind
for
of
this
him,
in my
isn't it?
books, and we were going to go
And
back
putting
and
it in
talk
his
to
wife's
partners
name.
and
I don't
figure
know if
out
his
what we
wife
were
even
gonna
knew he
do.
was doing that.
Ultimately, when is the sort of the drop dead deadline that you have to account for
Ridiculous.
everything in the books?
Usually I will do our final closing and balance all the time, but usually we'll do that final accounting in December. So I really start drilling down and looking at everything and balancing out in December. But I knew I had till December to figure this out. And at that point, I was more concerned about how we were going to put it on our books and also letting the partners know what was going on so we could make sure that it was disclosed to his attorneys with the boat wreck stuff.
You kind of just put
gonna
that aside,
rat 'em
but keep
out.
it in the back of your mind.
Right,
This is in May of what year did this happen?
21.
Later
May.
on that month, did you receive a communication of any sort from Alex Paralegal?
I did on Monday,
Who was
May.
that real quick?
That was
That is
Annette.
Annette Griswold.
All right.
They keep saying she's
one of his
Annette.
paralegals.
What did that
I guess that's how you
communication
pronounce her
she,
name?
have with you?
So I received an email. I was working in our Waldeboro office that day, and I received an email from Annette that said she needed to talk to me in
Annette.
private. And could I please meet with her when I got back in the office? So when I did get back in the office, we
Mute.
met. And she came to me with another concern that in another file that we had.
And tell me what file was that?
So this file we refer to it as the Ferris file. And it was a case with Ferris versus Mack Truck that had a fairly significant settlement. And the concern was that we had only received the expenses. When on this, let me first say, this case was handled by Chris Wilson's firm, and they were handling the disbursement. All the money went through their account, and they drafted the disbursement and met with the client. So if that happens, typically the associate attorney will mail us our fee check and our expense check at the same time.
Let me slow you down. So this particular case, the Ferris case, was Alec Murdaugh the only attorney on that case?
In our firm, I believe he was, but Chris Wilson was the associated
Is
attorney.
Chris Wilson in PMPED, or is he in a different firm?
No, he's in his own different firm.
And does that happen sometimes that two lawyers, one lawyer from your firm and one lawyer from another firm will share a case?
Yes, we have quite a lot of that.
And then ultimately those fees have to be split whichever way they agree to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then sometimes if the settlement money or the trial money comes into that other firm, then they have to disperse the fees and expenses to you.
That's correct.
And tell the jury again, what was Annette's concern? Did she receive part of it, but not the other thing?
Annette received only a check for the expenses,
But not the fees?
not the fee, which is unusual. So she had already, unbeknownst to me, contacted my staff to make sure that we had not received that fee prior. And indeed, we checked and it had not been. So the conversation Annette had with me that day was her concern that we were missing the fee check. And she'd had some conversations with Vicki Lyman.
Meaning the settlement
who was
money.
Chris Wilson's paralegal. And that led Annette to believe that Ellick had already had the money paid to him.
And that's the concern that she reported to you?
Yes.
Right. Hold on for me, and I'm gonna show you what's been marked as states 312.
When this lady testified, without the jury present for the judge basically to determine whether or not this could be admitted, she was on fire. She was like, just wasn't calling it the only the forge account. She was like, the fake forge account. Stealing. Yes, he was stealing. Yes, the fake forge account. And then when the prosecutor went on to another topic, she's like, oh, don't forget about this check right here too. She was just helping them out so much. Again, I have to imagine that if she'd worked there for 20 something years, she was probably friends with Maggie. Hold on, I'm gonna cough. And also her brother-in-law, again, is Russell Lafitte, somebody who was the CEO of Palmetto State Bank, somebody who was made conservator over some of Alec's clients, someone who was recently found guilty on 6 federal charges of financial crimes.
With no additional objection.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Submitted.
So I bet she feels very
All right, I'm gonna show you this.
pissed off
packet of
all around.
documents.
Like you
I'm gonna go
mess with our firm,
to
you mess
some
with all of our
emails that
careers, you
are
mess with my
defendants.
career, you mess with
And first of all, I'm gonna
my
show
personal
you this
life.
one right
You made
here
it-
and just see if you recognize that.
you were trying to make
I do.
All right,
us
tell me what that
associated
is.
with
This
hiding
is an email
assets
from
and
Vicki
otherwise.
Lyman, who's the paralegal
You mess
for
with my
Chris Wilson, to
sister.
Annette Griswold, who's the paralegal for Alec Murdaugh. And in it, Annette's questioning, why did we
Lord.
get the expenses and no fee? Vicki replied back, dear friend, it's only cost because your boss and mine got their fees once they were signed.
All right, so that's why Annette brought that concern to you.
Yes.
All right. Did you have any conversation with Annette about what
That
to
dear
do?
friend part is weird to me.
Well, Annette expressed concern about tattling on Alec and perhaps getting in trouble for him or retaliation from him. So I told her,
What's the concern? What's the concern right now?
the concern is,
I just asked her what her concern was, Your Honor.
the concern was that that money had been stolen.
There's an objection, wait. Yes, sir.
He's asking her what Annette's concern was, and Annette needs to testify about her own concern.
All right, so
It's fair.
you state the question, please.
I'll restate the question. What was your concern?
My concern was that he had stolen the fees and they were paid to him personally.
All right. Did you, in this conversation with Annette, did you instruct her to do anything? Did you send any email?
I sent an email to Annette asking for Annette to get copies of the complete disbursement from Chris Wilson's office, along with a copy of what we call the general ledger printout, which would show the deposit and the checks, and the supporting document to the disbursement. Oftentimes, we'll just get a copy of the disbursement. So I asked for the full records like we would have in our
I
office.
just cannot imagine doing this to people. I can't. How did
Annette
he?
forwarded that email to Vicki Lyman
Sleep at
Chris
night?
Wilson's office.
All right. And I'm going to
You're
show
taking
you
money from
what's
people
been,
who are there
was part of it.
at their most
Exhibit
vulnerable
312,
point
and
in
it's
life.
marked as
You are
2374 at the bottom, and just kind of read that email going up. Is that email
looking
that
them
you
in
sent
the
to
eye,
Annette?
telling them that
Yes.
you're going to
Is
help
that the
them,
one
take
that
care
you
of them.
were
They're going to be
asking her to
covered for
forward
life.
on?
And then you're
Yes.
just
To
taking that
request
money from
additional
them.
Information from Chris Wilson's
Some of
office to
these
try to get to the bottom
people
of it.
knew him
Yes.
on a personal basis, it
Then we
seems,
go to the
and
prior page.
either didn't know how to
Is
question
that
him
where Annette
or
forwarded that
didn't want to
document
question
on
him.
to
They
Vicki
believed
Lyman
him.
at Chris Wilson's office?
So
Yes,
gross.
Right, and just real quick, what was the date on that email when it was ultimately forwarded to Vicki Lyman at Chris Wilson's office?
That email was sent on May 27th, but Vicky was out of the office on vacation, so Vicky replied to Annette on June 2nd upon her return.
Okay, and what was the reply?
And the reply was just clarifying what documents that they needed. And at that point, Vicky replies
Agreed.
back to
People are
Annette that
awful.
she's not privy to that information, but she'll forward it on to Chris Wilson.
To her boss, Chris Wilson.
Yes.
All right, so have y'all gotten an answer at this point?
No.
All right, so what's the next step? What happens after that?
So we're waiting for a while. And on Monday, May 7th, I went to Alec's office searching for him after lunch.
After you sent this email on June 2nd, did Alec ever reach out to you or talk to you about the inquiries that you were making about where
No.
these fees were?
Yes, he actually came in the next day.
Just kidding. Yes.
First thing, Chris did not answer me, but Alec came in the first thing and said, that money's in Chris's trust. Why do you need all this information? And I basically said, we just need it for our records. It's what we have in ours and it's required for us to keep. He assured me that the money was over there and that he'd get the records and they'd get everything that we needed.
And
That
Chris
was
testified
some
2
point
days ago, I
after June
believe.
2nd.
I believe it was the next morning.
All right, and did you seek him out or did he? seek
That was
you out?
without a
Hey,
jury
no, that
present,
money's there
so.
the whole time.
He seeked me out.
And that's what he told you?
Yes.
I'm assuming he'll
All right,
testify here too.
Did, around this time, did anybody else, did you have any discussions with any of the other partners about what was going on with this?
I did. I'd initially gone to Lee Cope because he's one of the partners that does a lot of the managing. And he happened to be the one that was in the office when this was going on that I could find and talk to. And he also helped me come up with the plan of how we were going to handle it so Alec would not think Annette was questioning. Mark Ball also knew some about it. So
Um,
I'm assuming these are all attorneys at the firm.
Did,
Stomach's
was there
growling.
any discussion about anyone contacting Chris Wilson?
after we didn't get it, that came later.
That came later.
That came later.
All right. So Alec comes to you and says, all that money's there. What's the next thing that happened that you did?
So the next thing that happened was on Monday, on June 7th, I went looking for Alec.
Let me slow you down. On Monday, June 7th,
Yes,
what year?
21.
June 7th, 2021. What happened?
Went to look for Alec, and when I got upstairs, he was standing outside of his office leaning on a file cabinet. And he looked at me with a pretty dirty look, one I'd not seen before, and said, "What do you need now?" Clearly disgusted with me, which kind of raised my hackles. So I said, "Well, let's go in your office and talk about it."
I wish I'm
When
the
we went in his
what?
office, I told him, I said, "I have reason to believe that you received the fairest money directly to you, and you need to prove to me that you did not." And he assured me again that the money was in there. I told him I still needed to see the ledgers or proof that it was. Again, he told me the money was in there, that we could get it any time. Said he was trying to leave it in there to decide what to do as far as structuring some more money or putting more money in Maggie's name.
You asked
Which is
him for
hiding
proof,
assets,
that
which is still
correct?
not okay.
Proof that he didn't have that money.
Yes,
Were you able to complete that conversation on the morning of June 7th, 2021?
it was actually the afternoon of June 7th.
Afternoon.
But no, we were not able to complete it during the middle of our conversation. He took a phone call and.
Sorry about the
call
crinkling.
Was saying that his father was in the hospital and that there was nothing more to be done and he was terminal. So at that point, I've known Alec since I was 16 years old, known the family forever. It turned into a personal conversation about how's your dad doing? How's everything doing? What's going on? And I basically thought he was leaving to go to the hospital to attend to his father. So I left the office at that time and we did not discuss the money anymore.
You thought he was leaving to go?
I thought he was going to go to see about his father.
He had gotten a phone call about his father June 7th, 2021, correct?
That's right.
Did you have a conversation with Alec later on that day?
We did around 4 o'clock. My phone rang, and I remember because I was surprised that he was still there. And Alec was asking me some information about his.
Because he just heard that
401k
his
balance.
dad's dying.
And why was he doing that?
He was doing that because he stated he had to get some documents and financials together for a hearing regarding the boat wreck later that week.
He needed his own financial information for a hearing for the boat case that week, correct?
That's correct.
You know when the boat case was? The boat case hearing
I
was?
believe it was June 10th,
June 10th?
21, within a few days.
Within a few days. Were you surprised to hear from him in the office?
I was, because I thought he was leaving.
Thought he was leaving because of the call from about his father.
His father.
Good morning, Stina. Happy work day. I'm going to mute because I'm going to get up.
Did you go home at the end of work that day?
I did,
Went back home and had a normal evening?
yes, until about 10:30.
Tell me what happened at 10:30.
I got a call or started getting texts from friends asking if I'd heard if Maggie and Paul had been shot. I didn't know anything about it. They were hearing things on scanners. So I've sent texts to a couple of the
So did you piece that
attorneys
together?
and did not hear back.
She
until
confronted him.
Probably 2 o'clock in the
Paul and
night.
Maggie died.
Mark
Same
emailed
day.
me back or texted me back that they in fact had been shot and killed.
And the hearing for the boat case was going to be the next week.
Was that shocking?
It was very shocking,
Rock back and forth,
everybody
motherfucker. You're
scared?
caught.
very scary. You know, nobody knew what was going on, so very scary.
You said this law firm was like a brotherhood, correct?
That's correct.
Did everyone rally to Alex's aid?
We did. Nothing happened that week at work. Everybody spent time with Alec, trying to support him, bringing family meals, attending the funerals, so nothing happened all week.
After the murders happened, was anybody at all concerned about getting the proof for those missing fees after those murders happened at that point in time?
We weren't, because we were concerned about Alec. He wasn't working a whole lot. He was erratic. We knew he was taking pills. We were just worried about his sanity, so we weren't going to go in there and harass him about money when we were worried about his mental state and the fact that his family had been killed. It just wasn't even on our mind at that point.
Wouldn't be on your mind, would it?
No.
As a few weeks went on, did you ever receive any communication about those fees that kind of put the matter to bed at least a little bit?
We did. Lee Cope, who is one of the partners, took over. We decided we were not going to press Alec, but Lee made some contact with Chris Wilson during that time, asking Chris for information. And I believe after that, Alec searched me out again and said, "Hey, I've got that money." But it wasn't until I believe it was July 19th, I received an email that Chris had forwarded to Alec. Alec then forwarded the email to myself and Lee Cope. And in that email, it said, "I am holding the fees for the Ferris case," and he named the amounts and said, "They are available anytime that you should need them." So we're being told by outside counsel that the money is there.
Did you trust what you were being told?
Yes,
When you got that email, did at least for the time being, that looked like the matter was put to bed?
yes. I mean, these are members of the bar who've taken a sworn oath that we're supposed to trust, and they're telling us the money's there.
I'm still in exhibit 312. I'm gonna put this up on the screen. Do you recognize that?
That is the email that I'm referring to.
And this email comes from who to who?
Comes from Chris Wilson to Alec Murdaugh,
And then it gets sent to who?
myself and Lee Cope
From who?
from Alec Murdaugh.
All right. And can you read to the jury that paragraph right there? What was forwarded to you to sort of put this matter to bed?
Alex, as discussed, I am confirming that I am holding in trust $600,000 in the Andrell Ferris case and $192,000 in the Denise Ferris case, which represent attorney fees. I will continue to hold these monies in trust until I'm instructed by you and your firm regarding payment.
Does that leave you to believe that those monies have been there all along?
Yes, with some hesitation on my part, because it still seemed a little shaky to me. But I've decided that I would have to believe what was presented to me.
And this, what's the date on this particular email?
July 19th
So we're just
of
over
2021.
a month after murders, is that correct?
Yes, a little over.
Yeah, I take it forward a little bit. Well, let me ask you this. In that time period in July and August, going into early September, is Alec in the office much?
He's not in the office very much, no.
You had mentioned before the first thing that kind of came to your attention, and what case was that?
Hirschberger and Ferris.
All right. At some point in time, does that Hirschberger matter kind of come back to your attention to take a look at that?
Yes, like I said, I had it sitting there on my desktop right in front of me. But due to work and personal obligations and things that were happening that summer, I didn't start looking again until September. And decided to start combing through his fees for the year and just making sure that we had not missed anything else.
Before you go on with that, around that same time as you're doing that, does Annette Griswold come into your office?
She did. Incidentally, during the day, after I'd found what I'm about to discuss with you, she walks into the office and had found a check on Alec's desk that was made payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, and it was from Chris Wilson's trust account, and the amount, I believe, was $225,000, and it was signed on the memo, Ferris fees.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 313. See if you recognize that.
That's the check I'm just discussing.
All right. Your Honor, this time I would move States 313 into evidence.
No additional objection.
Admitted.
And what is States 313?
That is a check from Chris Wilson's client trust account payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh Esquire in the amount of $225,000 referencing Ferris fees.
Is it made out to the law firm?
No.
Who's it made out
him.
to?
It's made out to him personally, Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
When you see this check,
His face looks
what, if
like,
anything, is your
dumb
realization?
bitch, why do you keep
That he
talking about
stole
this shit?
money, that he'd been lying.
And what's the date on that check?
March 10th, 2021.
All right. So, and that brings you that check, and you're also looking at the forward. You said, explain what you were doing as well when this is going on.
So simultaneously that day, I decided to print out a listing of Forge payments to Forge Consulting. And as I was printing those out, I was printing supporting documents and canceled checks. And as the canceled checks hit the back of my printer, I could see Alec Murdaugh's signature on the back. It would say Alec Murdaugh, and a lot of them were Bank of America. And as everyone come out, I started noticing it more and more, and the sickest feeling you could feel in the world. I knew that he was stealing all this money.
I do have to
At that
say
point,
though, I'm
William
sure
Barnes just happened to call over to my office and said, "What are you doing? How are you doing today?" And I said, "I'm about to throw up. You need to come over here." And showed him the checks, at which point he verified that he thought that was Alex's signature as well. From there, we called Mark Ball. Mark Ball came and looked over the information.
I
We
don't know
showed
who
him the
these
proof
people
of
are.
the check for the 225,000. And Mark noticed that one of the cases that he definitely knew it could not have been going to forge because it was a workers' comp case.
Which case was that?
That was Thomas Moore.
Keep going.
So he knew that that money couldn't have been sent no matter what. We also discussed this with Lee Cope. We were trying to decide, how are we going to handle this? What are we going to do? Lee Cope, it was decided that Lee Cope would contact Michael Gunn directly. And we named a few of the cases. We got a few of the names. Lee contacted Michael Gunn, asked him if there'd ever been, to please verify if there'd ever been any structures with that. And also asked Michael Gunn if they'd been banking at Bank of America.
Michael Gunn works
Michael's
for
reply to Lee was that they had not banked at Bank of America in a number of years.
Forge Consulting.
And that he was unable to verify that those were indeed set structured fees for those clients.
All right, so let me slow you down real quick. You researched what name in there?
Forge Consulting.
So you're researching in your system Forge Consulting, correct?
Yes,
To see any instances where it was an Alec Murdaugh case that went to Forge Consulting, correct?
correct.
And did you find a number of checks?
We did.
You have access to the firm trust account checks on your system.
Yes.
And when you saw those checks, what did you observe that caused that sickening feeling you just described?
They were made to Forge instead of Forge Consulting, but also the fact that his signature was on the back and the endorsement on the back was Bank of America.
And what did that indicate to you about all those checks when you saw his signature on them?
That they were stolen fees, stolen money.
So my question is, why was there nothing in place?
That's
For
different from this.
The clients that they
That's correct.
represented. I understand the attorney. I'm going to mute it just for a second.
What's being,
Mute her just for a second. Why where was there no like follow-up in place for so many years that you know, yes, an individual attorney is taking on your case. Make sure I'm not muted. I'm not. Yay. Why? Okay, I work at a law firm. We're taking on clients. I'm the accountant for a law firm. Is there no follow-up procedure when you're finished with a client once they've won the case to wrap up the whole client experience? Like, okay, this is how you get your funds. This is not just from the attorney, because obviously that doesn't necessarily work, and the attorney should be handling other things. Maybe they should be present for the initial or conversation about how the client receives their settlement funds, or maybe the end conversation. I don't know. But why wasn't there, and why isn't there, even referencing Girardi Keys, why is there nothing set in place at an attorney's office to kind of confirm that they're getting their funds? If that's going unmonitored, if the attorneys are going unmonitored, why? That's so easy. Sometimes it's just a matter of opportunity for someone to realize how easily a crime can be committed, you know? No one is checking their back. There's no checks and balances. It is a risk, in my opinion, to the attorney themselves, to the law firm, and to the client. Again, I'm sure now that attorney's office, I believe, again, it's called Parker Law Group now, but I'm sure they have something in place now. But why, for so many years, was there nothing in place?
When we start talking
Strange.
about the fake forge account, who's generally not getting what they're supposed to get? Is the law firm or someone else?
Generally, the client, sometimes the law firm, but generally the client.
Generally clients. All right.
I'm looking up the name of the law firm now. I'm going to put this article in chat. Boop, 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 boop.
I'll show you what's been marked as States 314. See if you recognize this.
Yes, this is a spreadsheet of all the payments made to the fake forge, referencing each client and the amount that was stolen from each client.
And did you prepare that?
I did.
All right. And is this based on,
Again, that one kind of gets me a little bit too, that he could just name a bank account forge and that no one followed up on what bank account it was connected to. I feel, although Alec is the one who committed the crime, the law firm is a little bit liable in this situation. I mean, they had nothing in place and they let him run rampant. Is that guy picking his nose? Did he just eat it? Did that guy in the red just pick his nose and eat it? Oh. I'm sorry. Did he just pick his nose and eat it? So, yeah. Okay. I'm gonna barf. I don't know. It's not confirmed, but that's what it looked like to me. Okay. Yep, Parker Law Group. Peters, Murdaugh, partner, Eltsroth, and Dietrich, which was formerly PMPED, announced it will now be known only as the Parker Law Group.
we're going to pick up on your story in a little bit, but
Alex Murdaugh
you were saying
resigned,
that
forced
when Annette
to.
Griswold, around the time she
botched
brought you
suicide
that
attempt.
Chris Wilson check that had Alex's name on it,
That's coming
you
from
also were bringing up
WSAV
searching forge in your
News.
system, and that's when you saw all these quote fake forge checks, correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned that you went and talked to some partners about it and that sort of thing. correct?
That's correct.
And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but just real quick, as we go to
Yeah, like Stacy says. She says, every
Exhibit
time I hear about
314,
financial crimes
this
like
is that
this, it
spreadsheet
stuns
that you
me. We
prepared,
have
is
to have
that
at least
correct?
two
That's
people
correct.
sign off on all our transactions at my work.
and we have the, what's
Right.
this right here?
That is the
I don't
date
think people
of
who are
the
attorneys
check
are
where
obviously without
funds were stolen
the
from.
ability
Right? And
to
then right here,
That's the client
take advantage
name.
of people.
right? And then right here,
And that's just
what we
good,
call the civil
good
action
business,
number if it's
just
been
in
filed
case
within the court.
errors happen.
and then the category.
Maybe someone
is
doesn't even
what
have
type
malice.
that he
Human
did,
error
and most of them are
happens.
forged payments, or
Perhaps
you
the
see a
client
couple
didn't
other,
understand.
took insurance. so
And
it's-
that's a way
had a few
for the firm
methods.
to protect
right?
themselves.
And then
It does kind of
over
amaze
here,
me.
is that when y'all had to pay
although
the money back?
Yes.
completely
for each
motive
one of
for
these,
murder, in
the money
my
that was stolen,
opinion.
all the partners got together and
How
had to
there
put the
was
money back
no-
into client trust, and we went through and corrected and met with every
I don't know the
client
term that
and
I'm looking
distributed
for,
money
but
back
no,
to them.
no follow through
Um,
when it comes
That's an
to
ongoing
payments to the clients.
basis still going on.
So for all these clients, you had to pay, the law firm had to pay money back.
The partners came up with money and paid all the clients back
And why did y'all have to pay all that money back?
because Alec had stolen it.
Stolen it.
We're going to talk about these in a minute, but if we look at the
I'm so glad the jury's hearing this. You're going to
bottom,
hear
at
me
least
say
for
this a lot.
category, what was
but
the
I'm so
total that
glad.
you have, at least for this category?
$2,841,512.55.
And at least in this category, the earliest date we have is roughly what year?
2015.
All right, let's go back to early September. Do you remember what day it was that all this was happening?
September 2nd.
All right, and that brings you this check. You're finding these things. You say you talked to some of the partners about this.
Correct.
And what happens after that? What do y'all do?
We had a partner meeting at Lee Coates' house the morning of Friday, September 3rd.
Is the defendant there?
No,
Is Randy Murdaugh there?
Randy is not there initially. Initially,
Because that's his brother.
we showed all the remaining partners what we had found that, that he had been stealing. The consensus was, let's get Randy in here and let's show him. So he wasn't blindsided. Randy came in, we presented him the evidence, and he immediately hung his head and said, he stole it. We've got to do something about this.
Did anybody then go make contact with the defendant?
So.
What a
Danny
shame to put your
Henderson,
family through.
Randy Murdaugh went to confront Alec about it.
And what was reported to you after that
The
conversation?
report was that Alec had admitted that he stole the money and that we were forcing him to resign.
So they force him to resign. The whole firm sees it, is present for it. His
In
brother
the wake of all of that,
is
you
there.
ultimately had to start doing this review. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the spreadsheet that we're about to go through reflects those various transactions. Is that correct?
That's right.
Stacy says that's exactly why we have at least a two-step process depending on how much money we're talking about, because sometimes mistakes happen and they can be expensive. Absolutely.
And John, we'll take a break now. If you go to the jury room, please. do
And
not
then what
discuss the
happened with
case.
taxes too? Like, I don't know. Again, after all these years, I truly believe these people were blindsided. I truly believe they were naive and trusted their friend and family member. But as far as the law firm themselves, each year they have to claim income and for tax purposes. So you got to think, if he's winning these large multi-million dollar settlements and none of these are counted as income for the firm, I'm not sure if Alec did this to every case that was won, but obviously it was a significant enough amount for someone you would think would have noticed it not being accounted into the firm's income, because the firm gets paid and then they disperse it to the attorneys at the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken, is how this law firm says they work. They have to have things on record when he goes to court. And when I say on record, I just again mean for their office. Like, you know, where my husband works, they have boards on what jobs or what week, what is due to the client, then there's things that's from like the physical side, the correspondence with the client side. There's a financial side to that. Okay, we haven't been paid. Let's follow up with this client. Let's see where we're at. And then there's like a tax side of it too. I just like, no, okay. All right. So Alex going to court this week. We've got it up on the board, but oh, woohoo, he won. We never hear about it again. Did they even know when he was going to court? was that basically just renting an office at a firm? And like, I don't know how any of that works, but it's strange to me that the funds went unnoticed. The funds missing went unnoticed, especially if there was an accountant working there. And again, I don't mean to bash this woman. She seems completely blindsided. I believe her life seems like it was turned upside down. She said she's known this man since she was 16 years old, had worked for the firm for 20 something years. It was a firm that generations of Murdaughs had started and served this small county. I'm assuming that she was on somewhat of a friendly basis with his wife, Maggie. And again, she's the sister-in-law to Russell Lafitte. So I can't imagine where her head is at. And perhaps it was just not ever assuming that people weren't handling their own business, you know? And not ever thinking a friend and what you feel as a family member would ever even think of doing something like this, let alone actually doing it, and then lying, and then getting mad when you're confronting them. It is just, I feel very bad for most everyone involved. Definitely not Alec. Definitely not Russell Lafitte. Definitely not Corey Fleming. Westendorf? Chris Westendorf? Definitely not that dude. And who knows who else. This is a tangled web. Let me see if I can pull this up. I was just, reading Reddit. As one does. I was Redditing Reddit. Come on, copy. And an attorney, former attorney, was just putting his 2 cents on the trial. And it makes me feel less crazy for how he was describing his level of interest in this trial. The post is an arrogant lecture from a lawyer about circumstantial evidence. So this is going, in regard to no one actually witnessed that we know of. No one witnessed Alec committing this crime. So it's kind of switching gears from financial, just explaining circumstantial evidence. The person says, "We are here for entertainment, but I'm one of those weirdos who likes learning things. Amen. We need to become friends. I'm a 99% retired attorney, and this case fascinates me, so I've been following it like it's my job. Same, and I don't even have one, except kids." Just making sure I'm not muted. Okay. There is a phrase that drives me nuts. In quotations, it's just circumstantial. Is a phrase that nobody with any legal training would ever say to make a point, because it doesn't make any sense if you understand evidence. Quote unquote direct evidence is evidence that is experienced by a witness firsthand. For example, if you're walking down a country road, why is it always a country road? Why can't you just be walking on the sidewalk in New York? Anyway, you're walking down a country road and you start getting pelted with rain. You have direct evidence that it's raining. You're experiencing the event firsthand. But if you're inside a bank building and you hear thunder and you see a bunch of people start coming into the bank all wet and holding umbrellas, then those circumstances would lead you to believe it is raining. You have circumstantial evidence that it's raining. It's not definite, of course. It might not be raining. Maybe there's just thunder with no rain and a busted fire hydrant, but come on, use your common sense. It's raining. This part is very identical to the prosecutor's opening statements, explaining to the jury, got it, circumstantial, but use logic and reasoning to determine if the evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt this person committed the crime. Moving on, said another way, circumstantial evidence requires an extra step, an inference. You don't directly see the thing that's in question, but you can infer it happened. You know the evidence that everybody seems to love, fingerprints and DNA. Well, if your DNA and fingerprints are at a crime scene, that is circumstantial evidence. If your DNA is at a crime scene, it means at some point your body was almost certainly there. Now, it doesn't prove that you did the murder. Maybe there are great reasons for your DNA to be there, like it's your house. Then that would be weak circumstantial evidence. Whereas if your DNA is on the body of a murder victim that you deny you've ever been around, that circumstantial evidence is very strong. There's no good reason for your DNA to be there, and you lied about it. If your fingerprints are on the trigger of the murder weapon, then that is strong circumstantial evidence that you pulled the trigger. And even if nobody actually saw you do it, which would be direct evidence, it doesn't mean you did the murder. Maybe you just unloaded the gun and pulled the trigger, and somebody else put on gloves and loaded the gun and did the murder. But come on. Think of an R case. If the victim points at the attacker and says, he did it, that's direct evidence. But we all know that when people are traumatized, they make terrible eyewitnesses. Plenty of folks who were positively ID'd by the victim have gone to prison, only to later be cleared based on circumstantial evidence of their DNA not matching the R kit. My point is just this. Not all murders have a witness or a camera. The vast majority of all evidence in all criminal trials is circumstantial. There's no qualitative difference between direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. They are the same thing. They are just names for evidence. There can be strong circumstantial evidence like DNA at a crime scene where it shouldn't be. Or there can be strong evidence like 500 people saw you take the shot and it's on video. Or the evidence can be weak, but it's not weaker just because it's circumstantial. So quit saying that. Like this person. And frankly, prosecutors would rather have a strong circumstantial case than a weak direct evidence case any day. Sorry, my stomach is growling. I don't necessarily like what they say here, but if a crackhead with a mental illness says he saw you murder a person, and that's literally the only evidence in the case, that would be a direct evidence case. But do you think that's a stronger case than one where your DNA is all over the place and your fingerprints are on the murder weapon and you were caught on video with the victim 5 minutes before the murders? I think he's kind of setting up he or she for the kennel case. Last example pertinent to Murdaugh. There's video at the kennels that has Alex Murdaugh. Oh, pardon me. Let's get my voice together. There's video at the kennels that has Alex Murdaugh's voice on it. You can experience the voice. So that's direct evidence. Now, since it's not real clear, I would call it weak direct evidence. But Murdaugh's lawyers have admitted it's him 18 minutes into their opening statement. So now it's what we call undisputed direct evidence. I missed that in the opening statements. But the fact that he's at the murder scene 5 minutes before the murders is circumstantial evidence of his guilt of murder. The circumstances are that the dude was in a remote area with 2 people who were murdered 5 minutes later, and he lied about his whereabouts. It's what I would call very strong circumstantial evidence. They also do an edit that says, in case anybody is interested in seeing just how ridiculously invested in this case I am, I have been putting together a timeline based solely on testimony and my own conjuncture. Not every text is in this, but it's how I'm seeing the case. I love this. I love that people are talking about this so that I can feel less crazy. I also don't think I'm crazy. Maybe in the very beginning when my husband told me to remove my tinfoil hat, that was only like 3 episodes into the Murdaugh murder. And since his friends, yes, my husband's doing a little not mansplaining, more agreeing, which is unfortunate. Believe me, I let him have it. But some people he may or may not know, who may or may not be third down the line of may or may not knowing anybody related to this, have been like, nah, I think this, I think that. He is also on board with all this. And so are a lot of my neighbors, because I've been forcing this on everyone. When I go to antique stores and load up my stuff, I'm normally listening to the trial if I'm not streaming, and people are like, "Ooh, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, let me tell you." And they're like, "Isn't this?" And I'm like, "Yes, but also this." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yes." So I love discussing this. I hate that this happened, but I am so grateful that it has been exposed, and people like Mandy and Liz and Eric Bland and her husband that everyone forgets about. Moses, is that his name? I remember Luna, her dog, more than I do her husband. Sorry. This state is going to be a better place because of that. And do you know, mid podcast creating, may have heard me talk about Bowen Turner. Another person who Mandy Matney is responsible for bringing attention to his case and holding them accountable. This happened kind of in the middle of the state, nowhere near the Murdaugh people, but it was in Orangeburg County. Let me see if the BuzzFeed article on this, but describes it well enough for me to read. Basically, Mandy was like, we interrupt this Murdaugh podcast on Wednesdays to bring you Bowen Turner, and I wish a mother would, and let's bring some national attention to this, which she did, and made it where he was held accountable and hopefully has prevented more crimes that have occurred. Let me once again put this in the chat. I'm really bad about going back after a stream and putting all of this in the description. Bowen Turner. And not only is this a horrible situation in and of itself, but it shows you what influence people can have in this state. To me, they don't even have to have money. They just have to be in this weird circle of people who protect others at the public's detriment. It's kind of gross and kind of goes along the lines of that party I referred to a while back that I was at, where this parent was like, "Oh, my kids have never been mean to anyone ever. I understand have graduated from college, so they're probably like 23, 24, but my kids have never been mean to anybody." And again, I say, my child, the one who everyone thinks is sweet and innocent, and most of the time he is, but he's also a goober. He's disabled. He's not able to walk. Dude will scoot across the living room floor to grab his sister's hair. You're telling me your typical 20-something-year-old child has never been mean to anybody ever? Cool, cool, cool. I believe you. But it's just the mentality of some people around here. All right. So the BuzzFeed News article. This is back from July of last year. Yes. Bowen Turner, who was accused of R-ing 3 teenagers, must register as a sex offender after his probation was revoked. Let's see. Is this actually talking about when he was arrested? And by the way, the first mugshot photographs that they were passing around of Bowen Turner were doing him a very, very big favor to how he looks now. He's a 19-year-old South Carolina resident who was sentenced to 5 years probation after being accused of R-ing a teenager. He had his probation, revoked. And had to register as a sex offender on Wednesday after being arrested for public disorderly conduct. So basically, he was found at night stumbling out of the woods drunk, which has been his MO for the previous people he was accused of assaulting. It's normally when he was drunk in the woods at night. He was charged with first-degree criminal sexual conduct for allegedly R-ing the 16-year-old Chloe Bess in 2019, pleaded guilty this April to a reduced charge of assault and battery as part of a deal with prosecutors. In addition to sentencing him to probation, the judge said he would not have to register as an offender unless he violated the terms of the deal. But a month later, he was arrested again in Orangeburg after a sheriff's deputy found him intoxicated and walking down a road late at night. He told the deputy he had 3 drinks at a bar despite being underage. And when he was brought to the detention center, he said some pretty rude things to the deputies there. This isn't the point. So before that alleged rape, he had been accused by 2 other teenagers in 2018. The first one refused to be publicly identified. And then the second was Dallas Stoller. She accused him of doing this. It's been 3 to 4 people now. And he was on house arrest, basically, or probation. And that's when he committed these other alleged assaults. So Dallas, I don't think it's going to really get into this. Basically was harassed. Her family claims, like, how could you accuse him of doing this? He's such a good boy, comes from such a good family, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And she felt the only way out of this harassment years later was to end her own life. Which then later, the, what's it called? House arrest bracelet has data of Bowen Turner going and visiting her grave later on, when he wasn't supposed to be anywhere. Anyway, he went and visited her grave. So kind. So she died of a self-inflicted injury in 2021, and her case against Turner was dropped because it doesn't matter if he's held responsible or accountable for a crime. If the person's passed away, let's not worry about it. I mean, people who do things like that don't normally repeat the behavior, right? We couldn't be, I don't know, punishing him and preventing crimes in the future by having him serve time for it. So he was represented in this case by State Senator Brad Hutto. Notice a common theme. Harpootlian is also in politics in South Carolina. This person, Bowen Turner, was represented by a senator. They have a history of flagrant bond violations. He was out on bond in the case involving Stoller when he allegedly assaulted Bess in 2019. While on house arrest in Bess's case, he was found to have violated his bond order dozens of times, visiting golf courses, restaurants, malls, and even once traveling out of state to a car dealership in Georgia. How awesome! Thanks for living in South Carolina. Hey, Holy Speckle, I'm thinking of you. I've seen your messages. Or maybe it's not messages directly to me. I think it's to everyone, and haven't been able to respond, but thinking of you. You're fine. I'm going on a rant about South Carolina politics and talking about why I'm so invested in this, and discussing this case of Bowen Turner, where the podcast that I've listened to for a while that has covered the Murdaugh case, kind of 1 week was like, nope, we need to bring attention to this kid, Bowen Turner. He has been alleged of sexually assaulting people, and every time he's out on bond for it, another incident happens. He's represented by a state representative. He has violated his terms of bond several times, to include visiting the gravesite of one of his alleged victims, who was said to be under such harassment from the townspeople for, how could you accuse this guy from such a good family of this, that she felt the only way out of this was to enter life.
Please be seated.
Yes, it does hit close to. I have a daughter. Well, shit, I live here. I'm important too. Everyone's
Bring the
important.
jury.
All right, we're gonna keep listening to this again. I believe the accountant, is she still? I don't know if they were finished with her or not, or if it's a new witness. We'll see. But yeah, I believe I linked that article about Bowen Turner. But yeah, it gained national attention because of Mandy. And he went to jail, finally. Actually stayed in jail. Trying to read some more and see. Yeah, a quote from the
Thank you. You may proceed.
All right.
Your Honor, may it please the court.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Seconder, before the break, just to reset the table, you had
Yes.
gone in.
Agreed.
Did you go into Alex's office on June 7th?
Such a good
2021,
family are usually the most
prove
mess up
that he had not
families.
taken the Chris Wilson fees,
Yes,
and then that conversation got
Yeah, this is still the
delayed,
accountant.
correct?
yes, got disrupted.
And
and
again,
delayed.
sister-in-law of
Murders
Russell
happen.
Lafitte.
Correct.
I just feel
Did
so
you
bad for
receive an
this
email
lady.
in July leading you to believe that the Chris Wilson fees were in the account all along?
We did.
And then we moved to September when Annette Griswold, Alec's paralegal, did she bring you a check showing that in fact those checks had been written to Alec back in March of 2021?
That's correct.
And at the same time, you were going through the system and looking at payments to Forge, correct?
Correct.
And the real Forge is headed by who? Who's the main guy there?
Michael Gunn,
All right. And then ultimately, though, you determined these were going to what you called what?
fake Forge,
Fake Forge, which was accounts set up to look like.
I
Forge,
love
but
how
in the
she
name
keeps
of who?
saying that.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
The defendant.
Fake
Yes.
forge,
And then
stealing.
once you uncovered that, that
Wish a
started
mother
to pull the
would.
thread into a series of things you're about to testify going back the preceding years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so that's kind of where we left off.
That's right.
All right. We're gonna go back and look at states 314, and we're just gonna do these in order and move expeditiously as we can.
What are they doing? So I think they just kind of wrapped up talking about how
What's been marked as states 317.
all the attorneys, to include his
You're,
brother, had met up,
to the trial and see if you
discussed the
recognize
missing
that.
funds,
I do. This is the disbursement statement.
told
for
Alec he
Adriana
had to
Hay.
resign, and
All
then
right,
she
Your Honor,
heard
this time the state would offer states 317 into evidence.
of the roadside.
No additional
Shooting.
objection, Your Honor.
All right, and tell the jury what this is very quickly.
So in this one, there's a recovery of $247,500. There's attorney fees of $22,000, expenses of $426.54. And then the settlement proceeds to Forge Consulting for the client's amount of $225,073.46.
Right, and that's the disbursement sheet that was signed by who? Do you recognize the signature on there?
Alex,
All right, and let me put it up on the screen real quick. Was this record, was this found in the files of the law firm?
yes,
And whose signature is that right there?
Alex,
What's the date on this?
12/20/2018.
And what's the first name of the client here, please?
Adriana,
All right. And we look at this, this particular disbursement, it's got the recovery amount, that's how much money came in, is that correct?
that's correct.
I just want to
Yeah,
keep
but
reiterating that these are
Yes, and
people
that looks
who
like
their
that's a
whole lives
reduced
have
fee.
changed.
All right.
They lost family
It's a reduced fee
members,
in
and
as
this
much
is
as
who
not-
he's taking
Why
the
did you say it's a
money
reduced
from.
fee?
It's not a third or either 40% of the $247,500.
All right. And then we've got expenses, is that correct?
Yes,
And then finally, we have this line right here. What does that say again?
settlement proceeds to Forge Consulting, $225,000, $73.46.
Did that go to the real Forge consultant?
That went to the fake Forge Consulting.
And who controls the fake Forge account?
Alec Murdaugh.
Exhibits after they're in evidence.
What'd you say, Wiener guy? I wonder what his attorney like. I don't know how the hell we're gonna get out of this
particular
one.
exhibit.
We're in a conundrum now.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, and looking at the second page of this exhibit, what is this?
This is the check made payable to Forge for the $225,073.46.
And that went to the fake Forge?
Yes,
All right. Did the law firm ultimately have to pay that money back?
we did,
And why did you have to pay it back?
because Alex stole it.
Again, looking at these disbursement sheets, these are prepared by the attorneys and their staff, is that correct?
That's correct,
And then they're delivered to the finance staff?
correct.
And then the finance staff uses that to do what?
To cut the checks and give them back to the attorney to disperse it.
So they had a whole
So
finance
it's delivered to your
staff.
staff, is that correct?
Correct.
And then they did
Yikes.
what?
They wrote the checks as per the disbursement.
Still Alec's fault for
Why did
doing
they
this,
do
but
what Alec
that
Murdaugh
whole
requested them to do?
accountability
They
thing.
trusted him.
Checks and
He was their
balances.
boss, and that's what they thought they should do.
All right, going to the next one. states 318.
I missed that. She may have just described that like people were basically doing what their boss was telling them to because they didn't know
18.
any
See if you
different.
recognize this document.
But again,
Yes,
I
this
say
is disbursement statement
should have
from
been
Barrett
someone
Boulware.
All right, Your Honor, at this time I would offer states
charge of all
318 into
accounting.
evidence.
and some
No
kind
additional
of
objection, Your Honor.
So admitted.
All right. We'll put
person
up on
at the
screen if you
end
have
of the
problems
whole
seeing, just let me know
experience
and
with
I'll
the
bring it back
client
to you, okay?
to tie up loose ends.
All right, again, this is the disbursement statement for this particular case.
That's correct.
And who's the first name of the client, please?
Barrett,
All right. And looking here on this particular one, we have again a recovery and then we have some expenses and then ultimately we have this right here. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And who is that disbursement? What did it say on the disbursement sheet?
Forge, but that's the fake Forge.
All right. And do you see a signature on there?
I do. It's Alec Murdaugh's.
All right. And going to the next page, you recognize that?
This is the check payable for $279,850 and I believe 85 cents or 65 cents.
All right. And do you recognize that signature right there?
That's Alec Murdaugh's.
And do you recognize this writing right there?
That is his handwriting.
All right. And did this money go into real Forge or did it go to the fake Forge?
It went in his fake Forge account.
All right. And did ultimately the law firm have to refund this money?
Again, we refunded the money. Each partner put up money and refunded the money to the client
And why did the law firm have to refund it?
because he stole it.
Who stole it?
Alec Murdaugh stole it.
We go to the third page of this
Driving
exhibit.
it home.
Do you recognize this particular check right here?
I do.
All right. And what is that?
So this is an insurance proceed payment from, I believe, Southern Fidelity Insurance in the amount of $75,193. That check never even came through our books. He stole it, endorsed it, and put it in his Bank of America account. And we found a copy of it on his desk later as we were investigating.
Did the law firm ultimately have to replace that money?
We replaced that money as well.
Why'd you have to replace that money? Because he stole it. I believe she's been waiting for these moments since she figured everything out. You thought you could put us in this predicament?
Show you what's
Because all of
I
these
believe
people
admitted in
could have
evidence
been
of State
facing federal
429.
charges for,
Okay. This is disbursement
especially
sheet for Hirschberger.
even if he hadn't stolen from
All
the
right,
clients,
and,
just
on that
hiding
particular
assets
one,
for the boat trial.
let me, first of all, I'm gonna put it up on the screen, and again, if you can see it. if
They
you have-
could
if I
go
need bring
to
it back
federal
me,
prison
To you, let me know.
For just
okay?
knowing about it and not reporting it.
All right, I'm gonna go over to the third page of this exhibit. And this is a disbursement sheet in this matter, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, and we look on this third line, and what does it say right there?
The PMPED attorney fee Forge,
All right, and what's the amount?
$83,333.33. And that's the one we discussed earlier.
That's the one that first came to your attention?
Yes.
All right. Ultimately, go over to this next check. Do you recognize that?
It's the corresponding check for the payment to Forge for $83,333.33.
Do you recognize that signature?
Alec Murdaugh's.
All right, and you recognize that writing right there on the endorsement?
Alec Murdaugh's.
All right, and this is a check that you thought had gone to a legitimate structure?
Correct.
Where did it actually go?
It went to his fake Forge account, the one in his personal name.
I'm going to show you the second page of this exhibit. Do you recognize this check?
I do.
All right, and tell me what this check is.
This is another check payable to Forge for $91,867.50 for the settlement proceeds due to the estate of Jacob Hirschberger.
All right, And just going back real quick, the first amount of 83,000 and change, those were actually represented what?
Those were our fees that would be payable to the law firm.
Okay. And then this money right here, though, that represented what?
Client money,
All right, and
client
how-
settlement money.
And did it go, where did it go?
It went to the fake forge account in Alec's name.
All right. And did the law firm ultimately have to repay that money?
We repaid that as well.
So we got two transactions in this particular one. We got the 83.3 and then we have the 91,000. Is that
Yes,
correct?
and I had to correct myself on that one. We're still in the process of paying that one.
All right. And what's the date on that particular one?
December
They didn't
15th,
pledge it.
2020.
And then the date on,
May 12th, 2021.
all right. And that's roughly around the time that that came to your attention as you previously testified?
Yes.
I wonder if people can still like sue the firm even though they've been paid back for just, I don't know, negligence. Not that I think they should. I just wonder if they can.
Show you what's been marked as States 319. Have you take a look at it?
This is the disbursement sheet for Blondale Gary.
All right. I'm gonna go put it on the screen again. If you need me to bring it to you, let me know. And at this time, Your Honor, I'd offer a 319 in evidence.
No additional objection.
Admit it.
This, we have, what's the first name of the client here?
Angel,
All right. And looking down, we have a recovery amount. And then what's this third line right there?
forge structure in the amount of $112,500.
All right. And going to the next page, what do we see?
This is the check payable to Forge in the amount of $112,500.
All right. And did that go to the real forge or the fake forge?
It went to the fake Forge in Alec Murdaugh's name.
All right. And whose signature is that?
Alec Murdaugh's,
Going back to the original page, whose signature is that?
again, Alec Murdaugh's.
What's the date on that? I don't know if you can see it or not.
It looks like 4/9/19.
Okay. Did y'all have to repay that money?
We also repaid that money
All right. Why did you have to repay that money?
because it was due to the client and Alec Murdaugh stole it.
I'm sorry. It's funny because he stole it. Why'd you have to repay it? Because he stole it. He stole it. Did he steal it? Yep, he stole it. Who stole it? Alex stole it. Is that why you had to repay it? Yeah, we had to repay it because he stole it. Let this be a lesson, folks.
Let me show you what's been marked as States 320.
What's done in the dark.
Document.
This is the disbursement sheet on Christopher Anderson.
All right. Your Honor, this time I'd offer States 320 into evidence.
Additional objection, Your Honor.
Admit it.
All right. Again,
The
we have
defense keeps saying no
disbursement sheet. Is that
additional
correct?
objection because they
right,
objected
and
to
then
this
we
whole thing
have
and still
a
did,
recovery,
even
is
after
that
the
correct?
judge's
Yes, of $750,000,
And then how
decision.
much on this disbursement sheet was written to Forge?
$750,000.
Every bit of it.
Yes,
And whose signature is that?
Alec Murdaugh's.
Second page.
A check payable to Forge for $750,000.
What's the date on it?
February 20th, 2020.
Did this go to the real Forge or the fake Forge?
It went to his fake Forge personal account.
In this particular case, were there multiple recoveries?
There were multiple recoveries in this one.
All right. So some of the money actually go to the client back when all of this happened?
Some of the money did go to the client. And when meeting with the client to go over this, he told me that he was unaware of the second settlement.
And how much of the second settlement did Alec Murdaugh take?
The 100% of it, the entire $750,000.
What's the date on that?
February 20, 2020.
Do you recognize that signature right there?
That's Alex.
I'm going to start putting links in for some of the nonprofits of some of the victims related to or being associated with Alec Murdaugh or his family. I'll explain them as I'm posting them. The first one will be Mallory Beach, the one who is a victim of the boat crash,
I'm going to
who
show you what's
lost her
been
life.
marked as states 321. See if you recognize this document.
This is a disbursement statement, to Dion Martin.
All right. Your Honor, this time the state would offer states 321 in evidence.
No additional objection, Your Honor.
Submitted.
All right. Looking at this particular one, what's the first name of the client here?
Dion,
All right. And a couple things. First thing I want to ask about is we have right here, what's that third line right there? What does that say?
says structured for annuity directly to Michael Gunn in the amount
Remind
of,
the jury who Michael Gunn is?
he is the owner of the Real Forge Consulting that would do structured annuities.
Was there any actual structured annuity directly to Michael Gunn?
We were able to verify later that there was no structured annuity to Michael Gunn.
And what was the effect of having that line in this disbursement sheet when it was prepared by the defendant and his staff?
You can see a line where the payment, it says settlement proceeds structured annuity 500 out. So basically what he did here was create a fake fee or a fake recovery that he took a 40% fee on, $200,000. That $200,000 should have been the client's money, but he faked a fee.
All right.
It's just phantom money.
So by putting this line in here, right here, with that fake annuity, then 40% of that would be,
It was counted in as fees under his column in our system.
all right. And so just by that paperwork, poof, you have
Poof, phantom money.
phantom money. Did y'all ultimately have to account for that
We did,
with the client?
we did.
All right, down here at the bottom, you recognize that signature?
Alec Murdaugh's,
You see the date?
8/20/2015.
All right, and then moving on to the next page. And you previously testified that there could be multiple disbursements in a case. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is this one such case?
Yes.
All right. Right here, I'm looking at the second disbursement, and down at the bottom, can you tell me the date on this?
October 6, 2015.
All right, and down at the bottom, right here, what does that say?
Disbursement to Forge,
And what's-
$338,000, $338,056.14.
Did that go to the real forge or the fake forge?
Went to the fake Forge.
Looking at the next page, you recognize that?
That's the check payable to the fake Forge in the amount of $338,056.14, signed by Alec Murdaugh.
Did y'all ultimately have to pay that back to the client?
We paid that and the $200,000 back
And why'd you have to do that?
because Alec had stolen it.
Going to the next page, we have another disbursement in this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And what does this line say right there?
Structure to Forge, marked through $45,000.
Where did that $45,000 go?
It went to the fake Forge account in Alec Murdaugh's name.
All right. Going forward, we see this check. You recognize that?
That's the check payable to Forge in the amount of $45,000.
All right. You recognize that signature?
It's Alec Murdaugh's.
You recognize that writing right there?
Alec Murdaugh's.
And where did that money go?
To the fake Forge account in his Bank of America, Richard Alexander Murdaugh name.
So we had three things here. We had the phantom fee, correct?
Correct,
We had the 338,000 and change.
correct,
We had the 45,000.
correct.
And did your law firm have to pay all that back?
We paid every cent of it back. The
Why'd you-
attorneys put it in because Alex stole it.
Show you stage 315. See if you recognize this.
This is another disbursement for Elise Mallory.
Your Honor, at this time I'd offer states 315 in evidence.
No additional objection.
I just posted Gloria's Gifts website and Mal's Pals.
All right, who's the client's name on this one? Just the first name, please.
Elise,
All right, in this particular, what's the total recovery amount?
$183,528.
And is there an attorney fee?
There is an attorney fee of $30,000, but again, that's reduced, and I'm able to tell that because it's not a third or either 40%.
But that $30,000 ultimately was cut to the firm.
That ultimately was cut to the PMPD.
And who was it credited to on whose books?
Alec Murdaugh's,
All right, and then what's there's some fees for about 600 and change, correct?
yes, expenses.
Excuse me, expenses. And so what's the remainder?
The remainder is $152,866 that was payable to the forge, and that's the fake forge count.
All right, and whose signature is that right there?
Alec Murdaugh's.
You recognize the second page?
That is the check that was payable to forge.
You see the date on that?
I can't really see that.
I'm going to hand you back States 314, which is the spreadsheet you prepared. Is that correct?
Yes,
Look down at the bottom. Can you remind the jury what the date is of that particular check?
it was November 30th, 2020.
November 30th, 2020. Okay. Did any of the recovery in this case actually go to the client?
And that one, none of it went to the client.
It either went to Alex fees or it went to where?
To his fake forge account that was doing business as Forge, the fake account with Bank of America.
Was there any conversation with Alec about this case as it related to those fees?
There was, later in the summer of 2021, his secretary called over to accounting and said that he wanted to disperse some money to Elise Mallory. And at that point, we informed her that the money had already been dispersed. So then Alec said that he wanted to give a portion of his fee back to the client because she was just a sweet lady that he felt she needed some funds given back to her. We'd like to do her a favor.
Of the $30,000 in fees?
Yes,
Was that after all of that $152,000, the bulk of that recovery for that case has been instead dispersed to the fake forge account?
yes.
Do y'all have to account for that and pay the client back?
We did
And why was that?
because he stole the money.
Love it.
1 to 322.
So I'm going to mute for a second as they're going over more money that Alex stole. Right down here, Gloria's Gift is a, I don't know if they're officially, I know they're a foundation. I don't know if have their 501c3 yet. I mess that up every time. Gloria Satterfield was Alex's housekeeper that fell down the steps and then passed away. That is someone whom he told her children that they'd make an insurance claim and for the accident. And then he basically stole all of the settlement money. I believe they have since gotten it back, but basically it's in memory of Gloria and the Satterfield families. Gloria's gift will assist families in need in Hampton County to provide a special gift or meal at Christmas to their loved ones. It is our enduring hope and prayer that with each Gloria's gift, the recipient will feel Gloria's love and will likewise be inspired to leave the places they visit and the people they meet better. Her sister started the foundation. Mandy Murdaugh, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, Mandy. Mandy Matney and Eric Bland have contributed as well as Gloria's family. Because Hampton County is pretty poor county, from what I understand. And they said Gloria really liked Christmas time, loved it. And this is a way to help out the community and keep her memory alive.
But limousine,
All right. Did y'all ultimately refund this money to the client?
we did.
Because Alex stole it.
We discovered that those were after the close of the case, and there was no way that they could have been done.
They had been billed to the client?
They had been billed to the client, deducted from the client's disbursement, so we reimbursed those as well when we were giving our clients the money back.
Sure, what's been marked as states 323 to your testimony, see if you recognize that.
This is a disbursement for Johnny Bush.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I'd offer states 323 in the evidence.
No additional objection there.
Admit it.
All right, very quickly.
Johnny,
Johnny, all right. Down here, we got, what does that line say?
Forge, $95,000
Where did that money go?
to the fake Forge account that Alec held.
Is that the check?
It's corresponding check for the $90,000 with
Recognize-
Alec's signature.
All right. And did y'all have to pay that money back?
We did,
And why did you have to pay that money back?
because Alec stole it as well.
What did he do? I still gotta rewind this at some point. Rewind? Do we still use that term? See if that man really ate his booger. I think he did. I think he ate his booger on national TV. Allegedly, in my opinion.
24, see if you recognize that.
Yes, this is a disbursement to Jordan Jenks.
Your Honor, this time I'd offer states 324 in evidence.
No additional objection, Your Honor.
Admit it.
All right. Right here, looking at this particular one, who's the first name of the client?
Jordan,
Right here on this disbursement, what do we have right there?
a payment to Forge in the amount of $85,000.
Okay. And whose signature down at the bottom?
Alec Murdaugh's.
What's the date?
So this is what's burned me up about when this trial first started and everyone like, look at him crying. He
Second
couldn't
page,
have done
what is
this.
right here?
The check for.
What
to
would
payable to Forge for the $80,000.
killing his wife and
Right,
son
and
have
where
done
did that money
anything
go?
in regards
The
to the
fake
boat
Forge
crash? It
account.
doesn't make
You recognize
sense.
that signature?
And still some people say that,
That's
but if you
Alec's
notice the
signature as
timing,
well.
All right,
he used
looking over
this
the
as
next
a
page, what is
distraction.
this?
He used this
This
as
is the second
sympathy
disbursement with another
So
check.
people will
payable
quit
to Forge
looking
in the
into
amount of
them,
$65,000.
because they
All right,
did
you
for a little
recognize that
while.
signature?
Alec Murdaugh's.
All right, and what's the next page?
A check payable to Ford in the amount of $65,000.
And again, I'm glad all of
with
this
Alec
is coming
Murdaugh's
out in the
signature.
trial.
All right, and what date did that clear?
October 4th, 2018.
All right. This $85,000, where did that go?
To the fake forge,
The $65,000, where did that go?
to the fake forge count.
Did your law firm have to account for that money?
We accounted for it and reimbursed the client due to the fact that Alec had stolen it.
And that's where I think his tears were coming from, Stacey. She says, I could cry you a river if I were facing prison. Yeah. I don't think it was. I'm sure he probably feels bad, hopefully, for if he did kill them. But his whole world is imploding because he created it. He was sitting in a courtroom with his family, with his peers, with people who have been investigating him for 4 or 5 years, with his surviving son.
Show you what's been marked as states 325, your testimony, and see if you recognize this.
I'd be breaking down too.
This is another disbursement for Manuel Cristiani.
Your Honor, this
But then
time it
again-
states 325.
I wouldn't do anything.
Additional objection, Your Honor.
That's admitted.
No additional. But tears mean
Right,
nothing
first
toward
name?
innocence, correct?
Manuel,
You really don't.
What does this say right here?
forge, $70,000.
The fake forge account.
Going over to the
'Cause he
next
stole
page,
it.
you recognize that?
That's the check payable to Forge for $70,000 signed by Alec Murdaugh.
What's the date did it clear your trust account?
August 16th, 2016.
Where did this money go?
Went to his fake Forge account.
Did you have to account for this money?
We did.
All right, and why'd you have to account for it?
This money was stolen. This money still has not been paid back. It's under a court order to be paid into the court because there's some dispute about who it belongs to.
But ultimately, the
But
law firm-
ultimately, we funded it and it's paid into the court, so it came out of our pockets again.
What a nightmare to have to clean all this up. But they'll never be lax about this again.
I'll show you what's been marked as states 326 to your testimony, see if you recognize this.
I think they have triple and quadruple.
This is
Checking
another
of funds.
disbursement for Mary Duncan.
Your Honor, this time it offers states 326.
No additional objection.
Admitted.
All right. First name of the client,
Mary,
looking down here, what is that line right there?
settlement proceeds to Forge in the amount of $19,500.
That's a fake forge because he stole it.
See the date?
October 3rd, 2018.
You recognize that at all?
Alec Murdaugh's.
That's the signature you mean?
Yes.
All right. What's this right here on the second page?
This is the check payable to Forge for $19,500. referencing
Do you think
Mary
it's
Duncan's
eating
settlement
Alec
proceeds.
Murdaugh alive not to be able to sit there and defend
October
himself?
22nd, 2018.
And how much?
So many people are like, I bet he's going to take the
$19,500
stand. No,
Where
the
did
hell
this
he's
money
not.
go?
To its fake Forge account.
Did,
That'd be a
your law
fun
firm have to
ride,
account
but
for that?
no, he's
We
not.
did, and we reimbursed the client for that
Why'd you have to do that?
because Alec stole it.
Because he stole it. I mean, what is the defense doing at this point? Like, what? If they still believe there's a chance that he's going to be found not guilty, like, what do they
What's
do
been marked as states 327? See
if
you
they think
recognize
not?
this.
Do you think they'll come up with a plea deal? I don't.
This is.
Can
a
he do that
disbursement
now that
sheet
he's
for
gone to
Randy
trial?
Drawdy.
I don't know how law works.
All right, this time it offers states 327 in evidence.
No additional objection.
It's admitted.
All right, disbursement sheet, what line do we have right here?
Forge, $9,569.30.
You recognize that signature?
Alec Murdaugh's.
Looking at the next page,
It's the check payable to Forge for the $9,569.30.
what's
Yeah,
the
but
date on
nobody
it?
knew about it because it sounds like they didn't check up on him.
3rd, 2017.
You recognize that signature?
Alec Murdaugh's signature.
Did your
'Cause he stole
law
it.
firm ultimately have to account?
Stacy says from 2016, a normal person would have still been incarcerated for that, not out free, able to be a suspect in worse crimes. But I don't think the law firm knew. That's why I think he got bolder and bolder and bolder with what he was doing. It, probably started out with charging higher attorney's fees. Then it started with skimming a little. Then it started, I think toward the end there, he was at times not paying clients at all. He was just straight up taking all of it. And these crimes are initially why he was arrested. He was charged with murder while he was incarcerated. They did not arrest him for the murders first. They arrested him for the financial crimes first. And that was I think that was in 2020. They just charged him with murder, I believe, this past fall. And I think he was arrested last fall. Stacy says he can take a deal all the way leading up to the verdict. To a prosecution, a win is a win on the books. Yeah. I would say for everyone, it kind of is at this point. I'm still waiting for the defense team to. My theory is that they're stalking the jury, looking for any chance to say that they are discussing this trial. I really don't know how it can't come up in conversation. I don't know what the rules are if someone attempts to start talking to you about it and you shut them down. Like, that's not your fault. They started discussing it, or you see a flash of it on the news. Like, they have not been told not to watch television or anything like that. They've just been told not to watch it. I mean, obviously, they're not to look up any news programs, articles, podcasts, whatever, on the trial. However, they have not been sequestered in any way, shape, or form, other than don't talk about the trial with anybody. I think it's too easy for it to appear like the jurors would be discussing something, even if they aren't. If I had a Facebook page and someone's posting like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, you a juror or something, or hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you my bet is always mistrial, do some juror behavior. Pardon me for continuing to rub my eye. There's something in it. I know they have alternates, but again, this is in Colleton County. It's a small county. And as you could see from the caregiver to Alex's mother yesterday, when she was on stand, she was scared to freaking talk, man. So everyone up there as a juror member has to know somebody who knows somebody. If I'm way up here, 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon separated and know of somebody who knows of somebody, then you bet those people do. So Harpootlian is going to find a way. I think that's why they have agreed to have it in this county. Or he's just going to be found not guilty. But the great news is, pretty sure he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life because of the financial crimes. And again, because one of his partners in crime, literally, has been found guilty on 6 counts of things Alec was associated with. Stacy In today's day and age, it's too hard to stay completely away from any info on the case. Most of the time, we're already following the cases long before they make it to trial. I agree. I mean, again, when they were selecting the jury, the judge asked people, had they heard about this trial? If they have they come to a conclusion on his guilt or innocence? If they have come to a conclusion on his guilt or innocence, do they think they can still be unbiased, hear all the facts, and then make a decision? So I'm still perplexed as to why the jury hasn't been sequestered. I think a lot of people have not followed Mandy's investigation and don't know all the ins and outs, especially if they are somewhat close to him. I think they all just kind of wanted to believe in his innocence. And again, technically, legally, he's still presumed innocent. But I lost my train of thought. So there you go. All right, I'm going to mute me and of course I do at a time where no one's talking. Want some elevator music?
Stage 330,
You're not going to get it.
home stretch. Stage 330 to this trial. See if you recognize that document.
This is the Badger disbursement.
All right. Your Honor, this time I'd offer stage 330 in evidence.
No additional objection, Your Honor.
All right. How much were the attorney's fees on this particular case?
$1,240,000.
That's how much the attorney's fees were.
That's the attorney fees.
All right. And then if we scroll down this disbursement, we have, what's this number right here?
$1,325,000.
And that pursuant to this disbursement was supposed to be made out to who?
Palmetto State Bank.
All right. And that's completely separate from these attorney's fees in this case. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's addition.
Did those attorney's fees actually get paid into the firm account?
Those did, yes.
And those were legitimate,
Those
correct?
were legitimate.
And they were credited to who?
Alec Murdaugh.
And that's completely separate from this additional $1,325,000 below that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And what happened to that $1,325,000?
Again, it's not like he wasn't making money.
$25,000.
It's crazy.
Being converted into payments on his behalf through the bank.
But like Liz Barrel has said,
All right. Can you tell me the date on that?
completely unrelated,
November
but
19th, 2012.
she imagines drug trafficking
Now-
needs investors.
This particular amount right here, well, let me go.
Jellyfish Company. What happened to it? Who knows?
I'm going to show you the page 3 of this
I'm
exhibit.
dropping things.
And is this an email that you found in the records of your law firm?
We did.
All right. And who is this email from and who's it to?
The email is from Russell Lafitte to Alec Murdaugh.
All right. And what does it say right there?
It says, Alec, can you get Jeannie to recut check 43162 dated 11/19/12 as follows? And then it lists 4 different amounts. And it says, thanks, Russell.
Her brother-in-law.
And then below that,
Because he
next
stole
page,
it.
Is this another email that was found in the records of your law firm?
It is
And what's the date on this email?
February 6, 2013.
All right. And please, who's the email from?
So this email is from Alec Murdaugh to Russell Lafitte.
All right. And tell the jury what it says.
It gives an amount of $388,687.50. Whatever the amount I owe on the Hannah loan, $75K, and whatever the balance would be on the $1,325,000 after these deductions.
And again, remind the jury what the amount that was written to PSB.
$1,325,000.
Is that,
In that email, the last line, Alec asked Russell to email me and request that.
right? Did that actually happen?
Yes,
And so had your staff already cut this check based on the disbursement for $1,325,000?
yes,
And based on this email chain, did you ultimately recut checks made out to Palmetto State Bank
yes, sir,
and the amounts requested?
in the amounts requested.
And those funds, what happened to them?
They were used to pay personal loan payments on Alec's behalf. So again, the funds that he stole and paid obligations that he owed.
Did you have to account to the client for this amount right here?
We did.
And you had to do that because they were misappropriated by the defendant?
That's right.
All right, looking through these checks, are these the checks that were recut by your staff after the request by Alec
Yes,
to Russell and from Russell to you?
correct. And incidentally, in this one, we also reimbursed the client the PR fee because the PR had not done their job.
Gonna
So we
take a
made sure
quick,
that we're gonna reimburse the client
intermission.
for that as well.
Who was the PR?
Please listen.
Russell Lafite.
Her brother-in-law, because he stole it.
Just
I'll be right
slowly
back.
Moving through this exhibit, are these the various checks and how they ultimately were converted?
That's the information that I got back from Palmetto State Bank showing how they were converted.
I'm looking at this check right here, which is the 5th page of the exhibit. Can you see the date on that?
February 8th, 2013.
Going to this check right here. What's the date on that?
September 13th, 2013.
States 331. See if you recognize this.
This is the correcting disbursement for Arthur Badger that we reconstructed.
And that goes with the prior exhibit. Is that correct?
Yes,
Right, this time it offers States 331.
No additional objection.
It's admitted.
And this just again reflects what you were just talking about and the repayments of those monies. Is that correct?
that's correct, where previously it had the 35,000. And so our total repayment to the client was 1,360,000, which is the 35 and the 1.325
And the 35 is the
PR fee. Yes.
I'll show you States 332. And 334. We'll show you 334 first and see if you recognize this document.
This is a disbursement to Natasha Thomas.
All right, Your Honor, this time I'd offer States 334 in evidence.
No additional objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. And while I'm here, States 332.
This is the correcting disbursement that we drafted to return the money to Natasha Thomas.
Your Honor, it all for states 332 and
No objection.
Submit it.
All right. Looking at this particular disbursement, again, what's the first name of the client?
Natasha,
All right. And we have various recovery amounts here, is that correct?
that's correct.
We have the actual legal fees received in this case, correct?
Yes.
Who were those actually credited to?
Well, 800 of that is to Murdaugh, and then the other portion of the fee was the $15,000 fee payable to Russell Lafitte as conservator for this case.
And those fees were actually credited to who?
To Murdaugh.
And on top of that, though, go down to the bottom and we have this last line. What's that right there?
Natasha Thomas, Palmetto State Bank, $325,000.
That $325,000, where did it go?
It went to Palmetto State Bank and was converted into funds for personal use again, paying loans, buying equipment, et cetera,
Personal expense for who?
for Murdaugh.
Did y'all ultimately have to account to the client for that money?
We did.
And why did you have to do that?
Alex stole that money.
You recognize that signature right there?
Yes, that's Russell Lafitte's.
What is that check right there? Do you recognize that?
This is the check that we wrote to Palmetto State Bank,
And what's the date on that?
12/20/2011.
And hold on real quick. I'm going to go back just to make sure on states 330. This was Arthur. That's the case you just talked about a little bit ago.
That's correct.
The one with the 1.325 million.
That's correct.
And on this disbursement sheet, what was the date?
November 19th, 2012.
All right. Back to Natasha. Now, you mentioned it was often common for monies to be held back for liens. Is that right?
That's right.
And ultimately, the idea is to settle those liens, like with a hospital or something like that, or Medicaid, and then ultimately pay the client any excess that you were able to settle underneath. Is that
That's
correct?
right.
All right. In this case, were certain monies held back for liens?
There was money held back, yes.
Okay. And ultimately, was there an amount that was paid on those liens? And in particular, I'm showing you this line right here that says ACA recoveries.
Yes, there was.
All right.
Hello. Stacy says it's crazy we put that on people being a juror.
How
Like-
much was that amount?
$110,965.27.
And
Just going over money again. It's crazy we put that on people. Like Sharon from the Quickie Stop has to take some time off work to judge someone real quick, right? I mean, I judge people all the time, but yes. No, it is. I think it's a blessing and a curse that the general public is part of the judicial system and determining one's guilt or innocence. I wouldn't want it to solely be left up to one type or group of people. However, the other side of that coin is some people can be real dumb. And they also get to determine someone's guilt or innocence. So, I understand it's a civic duty. I understand people get paid like $8 a day or whatever, but I don't necessarily think it's fair. I think even though it's a civic duty, we have to be realistic, and I think we should just reimburse people's wages. But I think we have plenty taxes that can cover that. But yeah, then there's people like me who've never in their life been called for jury duty, and I'm quite disappointed by that. But this judge was very good. I don't know if it happens all the time. I have never been privy to jury selection. I had no idea that, and I don't know if this is a one-off, that it was broadcast and publicized. You could hear the audio of jury selection, although you cannot see their faces. But this judge asked people, if you have a child 7 and under, that you're the primary caregiver, you would have difficulty finding help. You have a business that it wouldn't operate if you weren't there. Like, he gave people a lot of chances and a lot of leniency, and not being able to serve, or if they work for the public school system, they could resume their juror duties in the summertime. I'm not sure that's always the case, but at least with this judge in this county, for this case, it was. But yeah, it is kind of crazy.
Be as conservator for Malik Williams.
Who's Malik Williams? Do you
Malik
know?
Williams was another client that Russell was a conservator for, that Russell loaned money to Alec out of that conservatorship, and this is a payment back on that conservatorship loan.
When you say conservatorship, Russell was put in charge of dealing with clients'
Investing in
money on
him.
their behalf,
Yes.
and he was loaning money to himself and to Alec.
He did out of Plyler. I'm not sure about Malik Williams, but he loaned Alec money out of Malik Williams.
And then money from some of these misappropriations you've identified was used to pay those loans back from the conservatorship.
Correct.
I'll show you states 333. You recognize this?
This is a disbursement for Russell Lafitte as conservator for Hakeem Pickney.
Your Honor, this time I'd offer states 333 into evidence.
No additional objection, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
That would be
All right, a
me.
moment ago, we were looking at a case of Natasha Thomas. Is this
Something
case
super
related to
boring.
that?
Although I wouldn't
Yes.
necessarily want a murder
They're
trial, but
both
I'd
in the
want
same
something
accident.
to hold my interest for
And,
sure.
I'm going to show you,
And do you know I heard that these
disbursement fee on
jurors
this
on this
particular
case
one,
can't take notes?
and again, we have a recovery here.
You
Is
can
that
count me
correct?
right out. My
Yes.
ADHD would
And
not
right
be
here
able
we
to
have
follow. Are you
legal
kidding me?
fees. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how much were the legal fees for this particular one?
For this one, there was $4,098,000 that would have been credited to Alec that were payable to PMPD. And we also paid Russell Lafitte a $60,000 conservator fee.
So out of this particular one, there were legit fees earned by, of how much again?
Almost $4.1 million, $4,098,000.
And credited to who?
Alec Murdaugh.
On top of that, though, we scroll down and we have this entry right here. What does that say?
Palmetto State Bank, $309,581.46.
All right. Where did that money go?
Again, that went payable to Palmetto State Bank, and it was used with the other money from Natasha Thomas to pay off loans and for conservatorships and loans that he had made personally, so for Alec's personal benefit.
And right there, do you recognize those signatures?
Yes, I do.
Whose signature is that?
Russell Lafitte,
Whose signature is that?
Alec Murdaugh.
Right here, what is this? The third page of the exhibit.
This is the check payable to Palmetto State Bank for $309,581.46 on the behalf of Akeem Pickney settlement.
And did you have to account for that with the client?
We did,
Why did you have to do that?
because Alex stole that money as well.
That's a man who passed
This
away,
exhibit, are these some of the various documents?
and they forged
Yes.
Tell court what the
insurance
jury what these
paperwork
are.
to show that
That would
he
be a loan
passed
payment on a
later than he
boat loan
did, so that
Alec
they
held
could
personally
still
with the
take money
bank.
from his conservatorship.
Again, another loan payment for that same Murdaugh Charter Bank loan. Check payable back to Mr. Charles Lafitte for a personal loan.
We don't have to go through every one, but that's generally, these are the expenditures you've identified as personal for Alec.
Yes,
Trying to wait till it's quiet, but Stacy says in civics class once our teacher told us how excited he was to get jury duty until he got there, and it was a case about water rights. That would be me for sure. I feel like we should be allowed to volunteer for jury duty.
I know we've been going for a long time. You had mentioned that, that one instance in which there was the loan payment that should have gone to Randy Murdaugh that instead went to the.
I'll do it.
Correct?
Sometimes when I'm
Ultimately,
available.
That happened twice and then it was detected, but he paid it back. Is that right?
that's right.
And the matter kind of went away. Is that right?
That's right.
Were there other instances in which Alec Murdaugh used the firm credit card for expenditures that were not business related?
He did.
And in those instances, what had
But I
happened?
have to be able to write down
Instances
notes.
that he used it for personal, we would deduct it from his annual bonus at the end of the year. Need to pay it back.
You pay it back and the matter would be forgotten. Is that correct?
Yes,
When those things were happening at the law firm, were you all aware of all of this?
no,
And stand by for me real quick. All right, sorry about that. Just real quick. When y'all allowed Alec to pay back the money in those sort of smaller instances, were you aware of all of this?
no, sir.
When you or your staff received these disbursement funds from Alec and his staff, did they cut them in the manner in which they were instructed?
Yes,
And why did they do that?
because they trusted him.
And in the majority of those instances that involve client money, did Alec Murdaugh also receive substantial legal fees in each one of those cases?
Yes,
And in each one of those cases in which that happened, at least on the ones we've gone through, according to your review, did he also misappropriate substantial money on top of that?
yes.
How long have you known Alec Murdaugh?
Since I was 16, so about 40 years,
Worked with him closely for how long?
22, 23 years.
Did you really know Alec Murdaugh?
I don't think I ever really knew him. I don't think anybody knows him.
Thank you. Nothing further.
I'll stand for a moment.
He's like, she's a jerk. I'm gonna write that down. Gonna see if I can pull anything up that explains her relationship in a more tangible manner. I've read this before, but I can do it Again, just in case people have missed it, Russell Lafitte, former CEO of Palmetto State Bank, was convicted on 6 financial crime charges.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That's a lot of the funds that they were going over just in the last
Your Honor,
10 minutes.
we renew our request for limiting instruction. We went a half a day, hearing all these financial misdeeds, and I don't want the jury to be lost on what the purpose is.
Okay.
Any comment, Mr. Waters?
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I gave this limiting instruction yesterday, and I'll repeat it, that this evidence of these financial crimes and other crimes that you're now receiving testimony on it, it's regarding the contention that the defendant was involved in other criminal activity. That is not evidence or proof of the offenses charged in the indictment. Those
Nope.
charges being for
But
murder,
shows
2
motive.
counts, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime, 2 counts. This testimony is being allowed for the limited purpose in assisting the state in proving motive. You may not consider it for purposes of character of Mr. Murdaugh, nor may you consider it as evidence that he has the propensity to commit other crimes, or that it is more likely that he committed the crimes with which he is currently charged. It's being allowed based on the state's representation that it helps explain the defendant's motives for which he is accused. And you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
afternoon.
Cross exam.
Aye.
I thought they were going to go out to lunch.
You have, show you Exhibit 314. You just put that up. You can do it for me, Doug. This is a summary of, was a listing of
She is not going to have this cross exam. I
clients
can
of
tell you that right
firm
now.
who the law firm had to reimburse because of Alex's misconduct. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now the law firm has been working with various law enforcement agencies since September of 2021, I suspect, sharing all of this information.
Yes.
And with regard to Exhibit 314, it would appear that the law firm, just for all of these clients, have paid out over $2.8 million. Is that right?
That's right.
And in a real way, the law firm
That he stole.
is a victim of this conduct.
Correct.
And for each one of these client transactions that the law firm had to repay, I mean, you're aware that Alec has pending criminal charges for every single one of them.
I'm aware of that.
And the same with the Palmetto State Bank matters that you talked about.
Correct.
He has pending criminal charges for every single one of them.
Yes.
And we're not here today to try those charges on the financial crimes. We're here, you understand, you're testifying because he's been charged with the murder of his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul.
I
right?
do.
And they were murdered on June 7th, 2021. correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, some of these, it looks like, according to your testimony, that this misconduct has been going on
How are they going to
since
spend
as early
this?
as 2011.
Unfortunately, when we found that out.
Right. So some 10 years before
Or are they going to try to say it can't be related because
Correct.
it went on for
Marion.
so
A
long?
lot
But
of
when they
people
found
must not
out,
include.
Understand. And I understand you have the right to be very hurt and angry about that. And are you hurt and angry about that?
Oh, yes. I take it very personally. It haunts me that I let this, or that this happened.
You feel like it happened on your watch and
I don't think anybody would feel normal feeling like that. It's a big betrayal of trust.
And Ms. Seconder, when I'm asking you these questions, I'm not in any way,
it doesn't
diminishing your
matter
feelings
that
or
this went on
anger.
for 10 plus
I'm just
years.
trying to flush
It
out
matters when
how
the
these
law
relate
firm
to
found out
the
about it
murder of Maggie and
because
Paul.
it
I understand.
coincides with the
Thank you.
timing of their murders.
But it would appear that it's been going on for
And you know
years
that.
and years and years.
So this is how they're trying to spend it.
Unfortunately, yes.
Spin
Here's-
it.
And it has cost the law firm in 2021,
But redirect is
And
going to
still-
redirect. Hmm.
you know, over $5 million who paid out.
That's correct.
And when we're talking about the law firm, I mean, we're really talking about lawyers in the firm, his brother Randy, correct?
That's right.
Johnny Parker, who's now the firm's named after,
Right.
Got a
Ronnie Crosby,
gnat in
Right.
here.
Lee Cope,
Correct.
Mark Ball,
Correct.
and others that have come out of their pocket to reimburse clients.
Yes, they did.
Feel like this is her conversation that she can have with him.
Now, the forge, well, let me strike that.
Yeah, let's not talk
June
about
7th.
fake account. That'd look bad on my client.
2021, the day Maggie and Paul were murdered, you went to Alex's office sometime in the early afternoon or mid-afternoon and to try to get to the bottom of where's the fee that Chris Wilson's office says they wrote to you for the Ferris case,
Correct.
right? And he looked at you and he said, "What do you want now?" Right?
Yes, he did when I was coming up the steps.
And you said, "I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't up here asking you about this."
That's correct.
And I think you said he kind of had a angry look
He did-
initially.
When I walked up the steps, he gave me a very disgusted look and said, "What do you need now?"
But then once you got in his office, his demeanor changed
He
and
did.
he assured you that the check was, the funds were still in Chris Wilson's trust account.
He
Right.
did.
And as sort of fast forward in September the 3rd, I believe it was, 2021, Annette Griswold from your firm found a canceled check written from Chris Wilson's law firm directly to Alec Murdaugh, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that check wasn't written to Forge Consulting.
No, it was written to Richard Alexander Murdoch Esquire.
And of all of these papers that you have been introduced in part of your investigation, that's the only time that, at least in these documents that you brought to court, where Alec has gotten a check directly, personally from another law firm,
I find it interesting Harpootlian hasn't been the one
PMPED.
leading
We
this.
discovered during the
that much anymore.
investigation that there had been another time that had happened, but that was not discovered by myself.
I think that's a good call in the defense, honestly.
And that was with Chris Wilson's firm also.
Yes,
But all of the other stuff that you brought here and talked about since 9:30 or so this morning involved this fake Forge account, right?
correct.
And then there's some stuff involving Palmetto State Bank going back 2010, 2011, 12, 13, early on.
Correct.
With regard to the events of June the 7th, when you went and talked to Alec.
She's like, ask me about my brother-in-law.
asking him
Ask me.
about where's the fee money. You had previously spoken to, I guess, Lee Cope or someone in the firm,
Lico,
and wasn't the concern at the time that Alec was trying to shield income from disclosure in the lawsuit that where he was a defendant, that where he was being sued following the boating crash where Mallory Beach lost her life tragically.
yes, at that point, we thought he was trying to shelter money or move money into his wife's name or reduce his income for the year by not claiming tax, by not collecting a fee.
But didn't he
And
say
it
that? You
really-
didn't think it. He said that.
And one of the reasons you thought that is because you had talked to him about what looked to be an odd way to structure an attorney's fee with the Hirschberger case.
Correct.
And he explained that he didn't care about the tax consequences. He was just trying to get money in the Maggie's name and not his name because of the boating accident.
That's correct.
And that was the concern and alarm within the firm, is that we're not going to participate in any way to shield high income from civil disclosure in a court proceeding.
That's correct.
Because that goes against the ethics and standards of the law firm and lawyers in that firm.
That's correct.
And no one at the time was thinking that Alec was stealing money from the firm, right?
I had my suspicions on whether it was really in there, but we were not pursuing it as stolen money.
And you had seen that, and I think it was May of 2021 or May 12th or something, that a disbursement sheet where attorney's fees went to Forge on the Hirschberger settlement.
Correct.
Now, it's not the first time the lawyers in the firm have previously structured attorney's fees in big settlement cases, haven't they?
Once.
One time. And the way that works is the money goes from the defendant insurance company or defendant company or the source of payment. It goes not to the law firm and then to the lawyer. It goes to some financial entity, whether it's insurance company or something. And then that money is then paid out in annuity over the years to the lawyer.
That would be the correct way.
And you delay taxes by not taking the money, right?
Correct.
And that's how it was done in the past,
Correct.
the one time it was done.
Right.
And your concern here was that's not how you do it, because it looked like the money came into the firm and then it was written out to Forge for structure of a payment according to Alec.
Correct. It would not have been, the way it came in, it would not have been credited to his account. It would have just looked like it was going out as an item. So it would not have been accounted for correctly.
Right.
And he also did not discuss it with anybody in the firm or have permission to do that.
And the one time that it happened previously, I don't know what the amount of the fee was, but the point of the matter is that money never came into the firm, but all the partners knew about it, you knew about it, and you were able to include it in your calculations,
Yes,
including the 7.5% that the lawyer is responsible for paying into the, I guess, to the
to the kitty.
distribution fund or whatever it is.
Yes,
That's sort of a leveling account that helps lawyers who haven't had a good year, brings them up, and, it just sort of smooths out.
and kind of smooths out overhead, the different offices having different costs and
But when Alec had given you that explanation and you said, that's not proper, you're going to get taxed. And he said that, I don't care. I'm trying to get money in Maggie's name, help Michael Gunn out. I mean, you never talked to Alec about.
He didn't say it was to help Michael Gunn out. He
Yeah.
said to put Maggie's name for the boat crash.
to my recollection, not since after the murders happened, we did not discuss any of that.
The, and the Chris Wilson issue was, there's a settlement in the Ferris v. Mack truck case. The law firm receives an expense check to reimburse the firm for the expenses, but where's the fee? Where's the fee? And that's what started the questions being asked.
That's right.
And you went in on June 7th to ask Alec about that.
How's he going to flip this?
You know, you got to show.
No
me
problem.
proof
Thanks
in
for
his
stopping
trust
by,
account.
Stacy.
Right. I told him we had reason to believe that he had received the money and I needed proof that he had not.
And during that meeting, he received a call that his father was being put back in the hospital.
Or was in the hospital and was terminal, that they had decided that there was nothing else they could do for him and he'd be terminal.
And you took off your CPA hat and your CFO hat and you befriended him
Correct.
because you knew how close he was to his father. Is that right?
I do.
And you know, and this father was a well-known lawyer and was a legacy name in that law firm.
That didn't really mean anything to me. I'd just known him since I was 15, 16 years old. I didn't think of him in terms of that. I thought of him in terms of a friend and my friend's father.
Right. And the Alec's close to his father
Yes,
and his mother
as far as I know.
and his family. He was close to his family.
As far as I know, I had not spent any time with him around his family in over 17 years.
But after you learned that his father was going back in the hospital or was in the hospital and was terminal, well, just fast forward. This was the 7th of June, correct?
Yeah, the Monday, the 7th.
Yeah. And on the 10th, Mr. Murdaugh died, did he not?
I believe that was the date, yes.
Okay, just a few days after this, he died
Yes,
of natural causes.
yes.
And so when you learned on the 7th, that
He
his
had
father
to
was
say
terminal or going back to
from
the
natural
hospital,
causes. Okay, jury.
you became his friend and you didn't.
He didn't get this
continue
one.
Your inquiry anymore that day, correct?
No, because I had told him what I needed and he knew what I was expecting to get back. And I was under the impression he was leaving to go care for his father. And in our firm, we're very family oriented, and anytime there's an emergency or something we need to do, we grant the person the time off, and I made the assumption he was going to go take care of that.
Right. And then you learned that night that Maggie and Paul were murdered.
Right.
What was your,
I keep saying, man, how are they going to flip this?
I think you said.
He's slow,
testimony that
methodical,
your
so
initial
he's going to
reaction,
flip
you
it,
were
but how?
Scared, you were
There's a
afraid.
garbage truck in the back. Sorry about that,
What
if you
were
heard
scared
that.
of?
Well, when this happened, there was a lot of rumors rolling around. Nothing this violent had ever happened. We didn't know who had gone after his family, if somebody was going to come after him, if somebody was going to come to the office and come after him. There was just a lot of dissettlement within the office. And constantly employees were scared.
But your mind didn't go to, gosh, I bet he killed his wife and son because I asked him about the Ferris fee, right?
No.
Then after that, you didn't continue investigating the Ferris fee. You let Lee Cope deal directly with Chris Wilson.
Lee Cope advised me that he would take over.
But the inquiry and the Ferris fee didn't stop because Maggie and Paul were murdered, did it?
It did, as far as talking to Alec.
Well, I mean, Alec told you what he told you, and then the inquiry was, is he telling the truth? And let's deal directly with Chris Wilson, right?
Correct.
So the inquiry didn't stop with Maggie and Paul's murder, did it?
It stopped for a period of time.
How long?
Couple weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Maybe a month.
Maybe a month. The death of his wife and son got him 30 days reprieve on your investigation into the Ferris matter. Is that what happened?
Well, it did, and then we received a word from Chris. At that point, we still did not receive the documentation, so it did delay receiving the documentation.
Now, let's be clear. When you're looking into the Ferris matter and you go in on June 7th, it wasn't reported to you by Maggie Murdaugh that, hey, I think Alec's stealing money. You didn't have any conversation with Maggie about that, did
I
you?
never have conversations with Maggie.
Or Paul, he wasn't involved in any way with the Ferris fee, to your knowledge, was he?
I never had a conversation with Paul.
And then you go, when Lee Cope's dealing with Chris Wilson's office, and then turns out that Chris Wilson sends an email to Alec saying the money's in my trust account, and Alec forwards it on to you and Lee Cope. Is that right?
Correct.
And once that happened, there was no rush to grab the money out of Chris Wilson's trust account, was there? In July of 2021.
We did not make the rush at that point because we had enough operating money and we were going to come back to it. Typically, the attorney dealing with that case would handle it, and Alec was not in the office very much.
Okay. So the firm had plenty of money to operate, and you just needed to get the money into the firm by the end of the year when you did the bonuses. Is that pretty much how things were being looked at in July of 2021?
I don't know that we would have waited until December, but we just were not doing it at that point that summer. It was actually just an irregular summer, both personally and professionally, keeping up with other obligations. Time frame to get it.
And so in September of 2021, you're doing your CFO job. You decide to, you had this Hertzberger thing, on your desk, or, you said it was on your desk. Was it on desktop, or you just had a sheet of paper?
Well, it's kind of where my important stuff is that I need to get back to, so it's sitting right under a monitor right in front of my face.
Why does that matter?
You talked about you had a number of commitments and personal issues. I think you said, I don't want to know about your personal issues, but what I do want to establish is Maggie and Paul's murder did not cause you to delay in following up on the Hertzberger.
It did. She said it did.
In some ways, yes, because the shock of it and the delay and the things going around the office did, but the true delay came in me finding the time to do it.
Yeah, you had a lot of other things going on.
Yes.
And what you decided to do is to see if there were some other kind of structured fees that Alec had done in 2021 to sort of, like you did the Hertzberger case, because you needed to know what his gross collections were and how much he owed to the firm, and that's why you looked in September 2021, right?
Correct. And I'm also still suspicious, in my own mind. I wanted to make sure that he had accounted for everything and that we had indeed collected everything.
Right. And so you ran a report at the law firm of clients with settlements. Tell us what you did.
Well, I started running a report of all the fees that he had collected and started looking through those disbursements. And then it came to me that I could probably shortcut this a little just by printing off payments to Forge. And then I've started focusing on those first. And that's when I found the checks and the information that I found.
And that, well, let's start. Do you remember about what his fee collections were about September of 2021?
I've got so many numbers in my head, but they were over 1 million, probably between 1 million and 2 million.
2 to 3
It's
million.
after 1 o'clock here. Why haven't they gone to lunch?
2 million of fee income that he had collected
Correct.
when you run this report. And
Correct.
did that include or not include the 792 on the Ferris case?
It did not.
So if you had the Ferris case, it could have been over 2 million?
I guess I can't swear to what his number was. I look at numbers all day long, but that's the recollection and range he would have been in.
And after this, after you've learned about this fake Forge account, Alec didn't, I mean, and he was forced to resign from the firm
That's
the
correct.
day or the next day, right?
The next day.
And so that money that came into the firm was used by the firm to pay off some of these victims, right?
We have done some of that, yes.
Now, the discovery of the fake Forge account, when you were when you ran the report on Forge, that shocked you, didn't it?
Yes.
That information had been in the systems of the law firm going back, I guess, to 2015 when that fake Forge account was first opened.
I don't know when, I don't think it was open that far back, but I had no reason to suspect anything was going on. We had no clients complaining about money missing. Trusted him. We had no reason.
Which is really, really sad that
Well, a lot of
clients
people, like I said, myself, and that's.
weren't complaining.
And that's a good point. Their clients weren't
Bitch.
calling up complaining around June 7th that, hey, y'all need to be looking at Alec because, something's amiss.
'Cause they didn't know
Wasn't happening
either.
around June 7th, was it?
No, and shamefully, when we did talk to the clients, they talked about how much they trusted Alec and how much he thought of them and how that they were shocked and confused by the fact that he had manipulated them and confused them all these years.
And so it sounds to me like on June 7th, you didn't observe some pressure cooker going off within the firm as to how Alec was handling his business.
I don't know about anybody else's pressure cooker. I knew I was putting pressure on them to get the answers for the Ferris fees.
And it was a brotherhood of lawyers that in the past, if they've caught with getting more than what they were entitled to, they pay it back and you let bygones be bygones. That's how it's operated in the past, right?
On trust, yes.
That's unfortunate. That needs to be looked into.
Now, so you ran a report on information that had been in the systems for years. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the tragic murders of Maggie and Paul didn't do anything to affect what was in your systems. Right. And you just started looking because you had had a conversation with Alec back in May about the Hirschberger fee going to Forge, not in an appropriate structured manner. And that was in early May, and you never had another conversation with him about that, right?
Well, May and June, in between, it was late May and June. The conversations about both were kind of in tandem, because every time we would talk about Ferris, he would bring up, I'm going to book structure fees. But it never specifically readdressed the fact that Hirschberger, it did address the fact that he should not be doing this again. And if he should, he needed to let somebody know. I believe Alec, meanwhile, was going around complaining to my partners about why I was on his case.
To his part.
Yes.
And now just to be clear, the Ferris fee money was, it didn't show up on any of these reports, and it was all paid into the law firm, was it not?
It was sometime after September.
My desk is so messy.
So here you are on September the 3rd, and you are running a report.
Very
See
close to
a
when
lot of
Alec was
forged
shot
checks
on the
on
side of the
Alec's
road, allegedly shot on the
client
side of the
files, and you
road.
start printing off the check.
That's correct.
That's how you discovered it. I mean, it was that Alex, and not only he's signing checks to forge, he's endorsing the checks and putting them into the bank.
Correct. And at the same day is when Annette found the check on his office that had been payable to him for the Ferris fees.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. So
Okay.
it just, I mean, that was pure coincidence.
Yes,
That
the
it happened
timing
on
of,
the
the
same
timing of that is pure coincidence.
And Alec, as you understood, was confronted that perhaps the next day or that
On
day.
Friday morning. I believe that was Friday the 3rd.
So it was the same day that you,
I did mine on Thursday, the
Okay.
2nd.
so the 2nd, you did
Yes.
yours. Okay. Now, on the 7th in the afternoon, Alec called you and asked you what his balance was in his law firm retirement plan.
Yes, sir.
And he told you he was working on the financial disclosure for the boating accident case.
Yes,
And he had called you on other occasions to get that balance because he was filling out financial statements for one thing or another, right?
he had before, yes.
Okay. And let me, do you know, well, you know that he didn't have any life insurance on Maggie or Paul. Do you know that?
I have no awareness of that.
No, that's all the questions I have.
Be direct.
Very briefly, Your Honor. You were asked some questions about when you had the conversation about the Ferris fees, and what was your concern then with just the Ferris fees back at that point in time on June 7th?
That he was trying to shelter money from the boat wreck or move assets out of his name or either delay collecting fees. So trying to hide income from the boat wreck.
At that point in time, did you have any idea about any of all of this?
I did not.
You were asked about prior instances in which there had been like the loan, the double loan payment and the credit cards, and Alec paid that back, right?
That's right.
And he paid that back and everything was forgotten. Is that correct?
That's right.
You were asked about whether or not all of this was in your systems.
That's correct.
And it was in your systems, wasn't it?
It was.
Since 2011, correct?
That's right.
And he had gotten away with it all that time.
He did.
I believe you testified that on June the 7th, 2021, when you went in to talk to Alec Murdaugh, that you had your suspicions, correct?
I did.
And you demanded what? What did you demand from
I
him?
demanded proof that the money was actually in the account. I wanted the ledgers showing the transactions.
And did you tell him what you believed? Did you tell him why you wanted that proof?
I told him I had reason to believe that he had received the fee payable to him.
You were asked a little bit about the law firm, and his father was in the law firm or had been?
He had been, yes,
Was his grandfather in the law firm?
yes,
Was there a long history of that family name in this law firm?
yes.
Is it the most prominent law firm in the area?
I believe so, yes,
A very prominent family name?
yes.
All this has been in your system since 2011?
Yes,
Once the murders happened, it didn't seem right to be raising those issues with the defendant then, did it?
no, it didn't.
Don't lead the witness.
After the murders happened, did it seem right to you to raise those issues to the defendant?
No, as I stated earlier, we were concerned about the welfare of Alec and the feelings of himself. He was not at work, and we were trying to make sure that he was emotionally okay and able to deal with things before we pressured him about anything.
And then just a few weeks later, as still in, just in July, are you still in shock from all of these murders?
Yes,
And did ultimately you get an email from Chris Wilson?
I did on July 19th.
And what did that email say?
Chris said that he had the money in the trust available to us,
He's got the money, so no big deal, correct?
correct?
Did you still, though, in the back of your mind, have some suspicions going back for a while?
I had suspicions that I didn't really believe that because I'd yet to see the ledger or the proof, and it seemed like there was no reason not to send that to me if something wasn't going on.
When ultimately you turn back to these issues and that Chris Wilson check was found, did that result in the uncovering of all of this?
It did.
Did that result in him losing his job at the law firm,
It did,
where his family name had been a fixture there for decades?
correct.
Did that result in him losing his license to practice law?
It did.
And the defense asked you that. Did that result in him facing a ton of criminal charges based on all of that?
Yes,
All of that was on the cusp of being uncovered, was it not?
yes,
Was that on the cusp of being uncovered?
yes.
Any further exam?
Very briefly, this second here. The finding the Chris Wilson check was coincidental to your work on the forged account research, correct?
Yes, but as we uncovered the forge, we knew we had a problem.
I understand. And it was the forge issue that led to all of this.
It had eventually been the issue if we requested Chris Wilson. Regrettably, that we did not in July, we would not have received the money because the money was not in there. We found that out later.
We'll find out about that, but the Chris Wilson issue is a one-off compared to all these other transactions that you brought here today, right?
That's right.
All right, thank you.
How?
You may step down.
Thank you.
She said, I'm out. All right. I bet they're probably going to go to recess.
And we will
Lunchy.
break for lunch and resume at 2:40. 2:40.
2:40. All right. I'm going to be out for a while. I don't know if I'm going to be back. I'm going to try to. My children will be home from school. So we shall see. All right. Thanks for joining. Don't murder your family.